Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here on this bright and early Wednesday morning. We have a lot of opportunities for learning. We have some really great, I think, follow-up conversations, really, as we start with facilities and move on throughout our agenda this morning. So I'd like to call this meeting to order. Let's see. Public testimony, I don't think we have anybody to speak, so there will be no public testimony at this time. And I think we'll get right at, no?
We'll just establish it.
Oh, we need to establish a quorum. You know what? That's probably order of business right there on the agenda. So, Mr. Rail, I will ask you to take a roll call to establish a quorum.
Here?
Here.
Here. Here.
Thank you. I know everybody here keeps me honest as I look around. I get the, the message, so thank you. In that case, we will get started with facilities. Mr. Miranda.
Thank you so much, and good morning, members of the board, Superintendent Baker, district staff, the millions, if not billions, watching on live stream. It's growing, I hear. So we get the distinct honor, perhaps pressure and privilege of setting the tone and pace for this morning by going first, and I'm really happy to do so. This particular facilities update is really going to be more of a show and tell, really a whole lot of photos, renderings, which allows us to really spotlight and highlight the many really cool things that are happening within our district's building program. We're going to break the presentation up into 3 chunks primarily. I'll take the first. Ms. Ferdoz to my left here will take the second, which is really spotlighting the Poly project in particular. And then I'll circle back with a few building program impacts. Speaking of spotlight, I want to spotlight Ferdoz and the facilities team at this point. So as we celebrate Women's History Month, a short while ago we celebrated Women in Construction Month. A lot of folks don't know Ferdoz heads up our construction program. Dana, who's in the room here, who I'll embarrass briefly, really helped us piece together the entirety of this presentation. And then I shared this with one board member, but I want to share it with you all. Our facilities team, and really still within an industry that's male-dominated, our particular facilities team is over 50% female, and we're really proud of that fact. A lot of construction folks in the industry celebrate when they hit the mark and exceed 20%. We're overtaking them by quite a good chunk, so I feel we're in a great spot going forward. So I highlighted our agenda. It's going to be filled with a lot of good stuff. Again, good images, good renderings. I'll speak to those, and then Ferdoz will do the same. There are a few challenges we're facing, though. So I will close the presentation with some of those challenges. Already we're seeing a few of those impact us directly in terms of a few project-specific impacts, but we also project some hurdles we're going to have down the line as well. So I will close with that section. This particular slide we've shown on a regular basis, and I want to continue to show it just in terms of emphasizing where we are with respect to Measure E, where we had the absolute priority to install HVAC units at every school within the district. And this question often hits us, so I want to beat folks to the punch and just kind of address it as well. We continue to make great progress here, right? So when I looked back at our previous board workshop presentation, which was in August last year, I shared something to the effect of, look, every one of these projects is either complete, in construction, or in progress in terms of planning and design work. And that's really where we are, right? So that's what you see spotlighted within the sub-bullets here. There are a number of projects in construction and several that are actually progressing way deep into design, right? Where they're actually getting ready to get started here this coming summer, if not the following summer. So we feel we're in a really great spot with respect to the HVAC progress. Of course, with our HVAC projects, I always like highlighting that it's way more than just the HVAC installation. We address accessibility improvements, infrastructure improvements, classroom technology upgrades, other finishes, whether it be lighting, flooring, window updates, things of that sort as well. So it's really more alike to a modernization for each of these campuses. State funding is something that continues to ebb and flow. When you look at that figure, it's a large figure in terms of what we've collected and put back into the building program fund. Of course, offsetting what we do at the local taxpayer level, right? So that's a good highlight for us as well. We continue to apply for these state-funded grants on every project that we're eligible for, whether it's a new construction effort, a modernization effort, or any type of impact where we're eligible for state funding, we apply. We have a team that looks to do that on a regular basis. It's a tough process in terms of the audits that follow, but it's well worth the effort just to be able to capture that type of funding source. Prop 2 passed at the state level, right? So we now have a new statewide facility bond, which is just another funding source for us to be able to tap into, and we're excited about doing so.
Mr. Miranda,
Yes,
sorry,
please.
just while you're covering the slides, could you provide an example or two of what state funding versus bond funding allows for us to do or not to do?
Yes, for sure. I'll actually do so right now. So with our local bond, we have a large local bond, right? And we're very supportive and thankful for our taxpayers for supporting our bond efforts. Really what that allows us to do with having the local bond funding source, it allows us to go at top speed, right? So as we address and identify projects in design and projects in planning, which I'm going to do throughout the presentation, there's no slowdown. For districts that don't have that local bond and are reliant on that state bond match, they have to wait, right? So for us, we basically treat the state program as more of a reimbursement program, which allows us to fund projects downstream, right? There's going to be impacts that I talk about later in the presentation that I've addressed in the past in terms of construction cost increases, labor increases, material cost, tariffs, which I'll address later. And the question that often comes with is, are there any projects that are coming offline, right? Are we not going to be able to fund certain projects that were slated for the later part of Measure E or Measure Q? That has not been the case for us, mostly due in part to that state matching funds that we've received. So we're really in a good spot. So at this point, I'll shift gears. I'm going to address projects in construction, spend a little time in terms of discussing projects that are in the planning and design stage before turning it over to Ms. Firdows here. So we're going to highlight roughly 36 projects or so. And that's not all of it, right? These are the major projects that are either major renovation or new construction efforts. There are other projects going on behind the scenes, and or there's a few projects I call deceiving because it looks like one line item, but it's a project that encompasses several school sites. Electronic door locks is a good example of that. You're going to see it listed as one line item, but that's an effort across every school in the district, right? So just large undertaking with respect to our program. What you see pictured there is a part of our facilities team. So we do professional development sessions 2 to 3 times a year. We often meet at school sites so we can learn from our own projects and just make our building program bigger and better as we go along the way. You see everybody with their appropriate attire, whether it's a hard hat or vest. We do the same thing to model that behavior for our subcontractors that are on site, and we do it on the regular. It's actually a fun time. Next image here you see is Lakewood softball. This one's also a little bit deceiving, I feel. So it says first home game for Lakewood softball. Not first home game ever, first home game on this particular field, right? So we, as part of the Aquatic Center project for Lakewood High School, which is progressing very nicely as well, it necessitated a shift of the softball complex, right? Just to be able to wiggle in. And if you all know our school sites, tight footprints, really landlocked in terms of available real estate on all of our parcels for the most part. So to squeeze in our aquatic center, which is pretty big in size, we had to shift over the softball field and make a few other accommodations on the site. That image was taken, it was sent to our facilities team. We thought, let's spotlight that as part of this presentation as well. Next one over is Hamilton Gym. This is a project Dr. Lund and I were just talking about as this presentation started because it's been a long time coming. This project was pushed back a handful of times. I heard about this project when I first joined the district 5+ years back, and we're happy it's not just in construction, it's almost done. So this particular project will finish probably just before the summer. Will officially open in the fall when students come back. And it's not just a gym, it's a locker room building as well. The scope of work entailed some additional modification and retrofits for some special ed classrooms. All of that is just progressing nicely. This particular image here, so of course we have a modernization and HVAC project at Tincher as well, but we're doing our best, and this was a good example of this, of aligning our synthetic turf field updates as part of our modernization updates as well, just so we minimize disruption for school sites, right? Once we mobilize with a contractor, there is economy of scale gained as well, right? So as we try and capture a little bit of savings with contractors and subs, we do that, but there you see the finished product. There's a number of fields that will follow within our building program, but just as a reminder for the board, for the community, we accelerated Measure E to front load the program with HVAC installs so we can in fact finish all of that work first. And then you'll see kind of the backloaded effort on the back end as we hit 2027, 2028, and 2029 with quite a bit of synthetic field installs across our secondary schools. Here's an image, and I always capture at least one of these photos, and I jokingly describe it as our boring photos, right? But I always have at least one, and here it is. So there you see the ductwork up on the top left. Boring but necessary, right? So this is Gantt, another project that's progressing nicely. With Gantt, really we overcame one of our largest challenges, which was how do we account for interim housing at this particular school site, really listening to community, getting our students and staff to a site that was within closer proximity over at Emerson. And Emerson just so happened to be one of the projects where we had just completed Measure E work as well. So that's working quite nicely. The project is progressing at a good pace. We're on schedule, which is really good. A celebration here. So this one was alluded to at a previous board meeting. Just wanted to spotlight the cool image. There's definitely some folks that got some air there in terms of getting that dirt off the ground. And really what I'm spotlighting is not just the project, which is a really exciting project. It's our largest in terms of sustainability pilots in the district, where we're venturing into some totally new waters. It's also kind of a reminder for me and for us to note the fact that we're going to have many more celebrations here in the near future. There's going to be some images and some projects that I spotlight really in the next few slides, but just be ready for those. There's many large-scale projects that we've talked about celebrating, including the new field over at Jordan High School, another groundbreaking event we're planning for Poly in terms of their major transformation, and really a few other celebrations that will follow.
Could I ask you a quick question?
Yes, Mr. Rock.
I know that at the Washington project, there were historic preservation issues. There were, I think one of the buildings was eligible for the state registry and maybe even the national registry. How do you handle those things? Yes,
So really handling them with the utmost care, right? So we respect the character and tradition of our older facilities. For Doze as an architect, we have several architects within our team as well. It's part of what drove me to work for Long Beach Unified, is working on some of these older facilities. It's just very cool, and folks don't often get that opportunity. So with Washington in particular, Mr. Otto, we started from a place of doing our best to preserve one particular building. It was Building 100 at the very front of that campus. Very cool architectural features and architectural character. Working closely with our architect and a professional service entity, we call the professional services CEQA, stands for California Environmental Quality Act. They help us look at a number of factors, right? So, and they ensure that we've looked at every one of those factors. So it's things like environmental impacts, noise issues, light pollution issues, things of that sort, but also historic buildings. Right, so for us, it's a hand-in-hand effort, working with our architect, working with our CEQA consultant, working with Long Beach Heritage, just a number of our stakeholders to make these determinations. With Washington, really what drove us ultimately to demolish that particular building and just build the campus anew from start is the classrooms were so severely undersized. Right, so the feeling there was, look, we can preserve this building and maintain it, renovate it in a major way, structurally retrofit it, perhaps even expand it, but it's not going to do justice by that community and by our students, right? Because we're still going to be serving students in drastically undersized classrooms. So there, where the dialogue pushes us is deeper into conversation with our CEQA consultants, with Long Beach Heritage, with other partners, and really what we heard from folks loud and clear is like, yes, we understand. We understand why you had to do what you had to do. It's a tough call, even internally, right? Because we wanted to do our best to hang on to one particular building and build around it. It wasn't feasible. In this particular scenario with Washington, also just the footprint again, speaking to where we're landlocked. Close to 1,000 kids on 5.1 acres of our property. Really what gave us opportunity to do right by this project and this community is the full demolition on the campus and having the opportunity for a do-over, building vertical on every building and giving us some more space and some wiggle room on the campus.
Do you work with the city on issues like that as well?
We work in concert with the city as well, and not just on the historic nature of buildings, but anything and everything on the project, right? Whether it's traffic flow and shutting down streets at a certain point in time to get deliveries made on campus. With Washington in particular, adjacent to our school site is an alleyway and residential units just to the side of it as well. So a lot of work in the spirit of cooperation with the city on how we would tackle that particular element as well.
Mr. Miranda, since you're talking more specifically about Washington, can you talk about some of the efforts our district has made and is continuing to make with regards to mitigation of dust, sound, just the impact, overall impact of a construction project this big in a community that's, let's just say, already has a lot of challenges and issues?
Yes.
And we did have some community, inquiries as to what we were doing, what we could do better. Can you talk us through of what we're doing with regards to
And
that?
it goes hand in hand, Dr. Benitez. Dust control and mitigation efforts feed off of our CEQA report, our environmental impact report as well. So there's measures that are specifically spelled out in terms of what we do for dust control measures, and we follow those, right? So we have a team of project managers that's on site to make sure the project is seen through to fruition. We have construction managers on site that are making sure that the project specifications are followed, including specifications laid out in the CEQA documents. And we monitor things like dust control in mitigation efforts. Sometimes they're large scale, sometimes they're smaller in scale, so they could be deceiving to the public, I feel. So we've probably seen job sites, and this is a large one, where water trucks will follow an excavator or demolition activities, right? And that's large scale demolition I'm talking about. Sometimes it's smaller scale activities where it's one or two individuals following with what looks like a garden hose just to keep dust down as well. And perfectly practical and acceptable method, it just depends on the scale of the demolition activity, right? We also sequence the flow of not just demolition activities, but construction activities so that there's not action going on within all different parts of the parcel at any given time, because otherwise we cannot keep up with dust control measures. So it's really a number of efforts is what I'm saying. One, what did the initial plan and sequencing of work look like, and is that acceptable? Can we, in fact, follow with dust control and mitigation efforts based on that schedule? And then just keeping folks honest, right? Being visible, being highly present from our team and our consultants we hire for projects to make sure our contractors and subcontractors are following those methodologies. Every once in a while, we'll have to remind folks, like, hey, look, be extra vigilant. There's a lot going on here. Let's perhaps slow down, let's shift gears, or in fact, introduce new measures, and that's always welcome.
Where would one go if one is a community member, Mr. Miranda, and has concerns and or questions and or is noticing things? And again, we discussed this even before we approved this project, that this community has a history of things not being addressed and things not going well for it. So keeping that in mind, also the role that this particular school played in the community, right? Yes. We talked about that was a safe haven. And we talked about just the intentionality behind not blocking the entire project off from the rest of the community. We talked about issues around safety, density, pedestrian accidents in that community. So just, again, where would one go as a community member if there were questions, concerns?
Yeah, I suggest the feedback comes directly to us in the facilities department. We want to know. We want to hear from our community, right? So if there's a concern, a question, a phone call, we want to come in our way first. There's a lot of folks who prefer reaching out to our contractor directly because that's the contractor they see on site, but we want to know, right? Because if there's a contractor not following our protocol, we want to be able to address it directly with them as well. So lbschoolbonds.net highlights a lot of our project-related information and updates, so that's a great resource, but also our direct phone number and contact information and email address for our bond program and folks is listed on our website. Perfect, good question. All right, we'll keep on with the show and tell here. So next one is really a short video just demonstrating our activities over at Jordan High School. And let's see if we can get this going. Oh. Here we go. This is compliments of our builder on this site. When we speak demo, dust control, abatement, it's large-scale activities, right? If you're familiar with the Jordan campus, these were large buildings that handled our athletics for this particular campus. So you see the field work, stadium work off to the top. There you see some of the dust control measures going on right then and there, just as we discussed. So this video is very timely and appropriate. I'll say as we're hovering over that field area, we're looking at turning over the field portion of this improvement to the campus in the fall. And they're very excited about that. New bleachers, new press box, storage space below the bleachers, concession buildings. It's just athletics altogether at this campus will be refreshed. This is also the last phase of work at Jordan High School, right? We've addressed a number of the improvements on classroom buildings, and athletics is the final phase. Yeah, with this one in particular, we thought I can sit here and talk about it all day, but it doesn't do it justice. You've got to see that video for sure. So a handful of other projects in construction. I mentioned there's several. I won't go through every one of these. This is just a brief listing that demonstrates what else is in the works. I will highlight additional projects that are nearing completion. So Wilson and Lakewood Aquatic Centers in particular, I know there's great interest there, and projects that have been a long time coming as well. We're on track. Lakewood is slightly ahead of Wilson's schedule, but both will open in the fall. So we predict Lakewood wraps up at some point this June. Wilson wraps up at some point this August. Both will open to students and staff and community in the fall. So we're pretty excited about that. So projects and planning, and there you see our team. So I highlighted our team earlier. I like giving them a whole lot of kudos. You see a sign there that we're kind of holding up, and it reads, Designing and Building Brighter Futures. We talk about this type of stuff as team members as well in terms of how we align to district mission and vision and strategic plan. We came up with that little slogan ourselves. Everybody signed off and committed to that particular saying as a facilities team. But that was also on one of our professional development days as a facilities unit. Projects and planning, again, I won't highlight everything on this list, but just wanted to give you a cheat sheet of sort that demonstrates which projects are coming down the pipeline and which respective year they start construction in. I'll spotlight a few of them. So solar canopies, you see there listed with a start date of 2025, year 2025. That's another one of those projects that's a little deceiving because it includes 16 sites altogether in terms of this next solar phase. We're looking at break ground as soon as we can. First couple projects on the list are Webster and Muir, and then we just go from that point forward across the entirety of the list. Electronic door locks I spoke to earlier, that's a project that's going to encompass every school site in the district, every building in the district at some point. We're targeting a 6-year effort altogether. That's just a project that even if you look at it and scale it, it's roughly one school or one location per month. And that's fairly aggressive for the amount of work that will be entailed into that type of effort as well. Henry is one I'll give just a call out to, and then I'll speak to it a little later as well. Henry is one of those projects where we first saw an impact in terms of building industry impacts, right? Delays with state agency approvals, just other impacts with respect to the project where we've had to push the project back. We had a community meeting recently. Board President Craighead was in attendance. David Zaid was in attendance, helping us field questions and answers as well. Number of solid questions, and we've done our best to answer every one of those in a very transparent fashion. Many of them were asked and answered that particular evening. We continue to follow up with our efforts with Chantel in public information to distribute that Q&A sheet to the entirety of the community so everybody sees it, right? We understand everybody cannot attend the meetings, but we want to make sure the information reaches them as well. So that's an effort that we undertook recently. And then the other piece I'll spotlight here before pushing forward is kind of what I called out earlier, 2027 construction start date. And you see that particular column a little more heavy with field work. Right, so that's where we shift gears slightly from some of the mods and HVAC improvements and go a little heavier on field improvements. With that, we're going to shift gears and go into Poly. I'm going to turn it over to Firdaus for this particular part of the presentation. If you recall, in August, we had probably 3, if not 4 slides with really cool images of Poly, but we also felt that didn't do it justice. This is a really massive project that's going to take several years. The school site needs the help, and the buildings definitely need the love. So we figured we spent some time this morning just diving into the specifics, For those, we'll highlight some schedule impacts and kind of sequencing impacts, but really tell you a little more in detail about the Poly project.
You know, before we get started with that, I just want to commend you and your team for the community meetings. It was a little bit of a tough situation because we've pushed the Henry project back a little, and you were very responsive to everybody's concerns. The parents are concerned about heat mitigations in the meantime because now they're looking at more, a longer heat season, if you will, because we've pushed back the project. And so there were a lot of, possible solutions being thrown out, and there were concerns about our, students with asthma and different health issues, and I thought it was very handled in a very sensitive way, because we're talking about our students, and I think no matter what you're doing with facilities, it always comes back to the students, and I just want to thank you for doing that, because that's why we're here, that's why we do what we do, and it's so nice to see that, repeated over and over. So thank you for that.
No, thank you so much. So we're still looking at mitigation measures, right? Heat mitigation efforts in particular. We've committed to the community. We're leaving no stone unturned, right? That there's things we've put into place at particular school sites for the last couple of years, but we're also continuing to look for other measures. So, and we'll keep folks updated in that regard.
Thank you, David. Good morning, everybody. I'm Firdaus Fazeli, and I'm privileged to be here today to present Poly Transformation Project, which creates innovative learning spaces for our students. First, I wanted to thank my colleagues, Dana Grudem sitting here with us, Tracy Nishihira, Dan Barr, and entire Poly team are in the office today, and also our architect partner, LPA Design Group. This team's expertise and dedication is essential to the success of our project. This project, Poly Transformation, is built on the feedback that we have received from community through multiple engagement sessions we have held with students, parents, educators, our internal business services partners, and we have set up clear goals for the project that you see on the screen today. We are committed to improve a student's wellness. For that, we are improving safety on campus. We are adding green spaces, outdoor collaboration spaces, and also we're building a new wellness center for the project for the Poly campus. We are committed to preserve the campus history and also improve access for the community and spectators to the sporting events. This project is following our sustainability plan, is CHIPS designed, and we are incorporating multiple sustainability initiatives. We are bringing in solar panels. The all new buildings that are coming in are all electric. All the building envelopes are insulated to improve thermal improvement for the campus. We are using sustainable landscape, drought-tolerant landscape, and also for the pool, for our aquatic center, we are using an innovative pool filtration system that preserves thousands of gallons of water annually. And lastly, we heard loud and clear from the community that thermal comfort is important for the project. We are adding HVAC to all existing buildings, and as well as creating 21st century learning spaces for our students. This view is an aerial view of the transformation project from the Jackrabbit Lane. The transformation project aims to demolish all the aging buildings that are located along the Jackrabbit Lane, and as well as demolishing the aging existing gymnasium unit and the two-story classroom building 150. In their place, we are building 5 new structures, a student services building, a 2-story gymnasium building, an aquatic center with the aquatic building, a performing arts center, and a new 2-story building. We have also this project includes the HVAC modernization for the buildings that are remaining on campus, and also the 3-story CTE classroom building, which are a little bit ahead of the schedule than the transformation project you see on the screen. Here is the site plan of the campus. Jackrabbit Lane is located on the north of the site plan, and Atlantic Avenue is to the left of the site plan that you see on this screen. The existing historical buildings and the historical quad are located to the left of the campus. The half of the campus to the left are the existing buildings that are remaining on campus, and the half right of the site plan are the site improvement and the new buildings that are coming on campus. I talked about improving safety for the site. Currently, the drop-off area for our students, this bus drop-off is located in front of the auditorium along the Atlantic Avenue. We are moving the drop-off to the Jackrabbit Lane, and for that we needed to widen the Jackrabbit Lane. So now the student drop-off, bus drop-off, and also the athletic buses have designated areas along the Jackrabbit Lane. Before I share the renderings for the transformation project, I wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about the schedule for the project and the construction logistics that we have developed in partnership with our builder, CW Driver. We plan to start the HVAC modernization project this summer in August, and due to the scale of the project, we need to split it in 2 phases. It's going to be a 2-year project. And when we had our community engagement, we heard from the community the need for the students to stay on campus rather than moving outside of the campus. For that, we need to bring in 52 portable classroom buildings and drop them on the existing baseball field. So that interim housing currently is under construction and is expected to finish right in time before fall opening, so we can move the first group of students into the interim housing. The first buildings include the classroom buildings 200, 300, and 400. Those are along the Atlantic Avenue. And we have enough portable units for these students that are in these 3 classroom buildings to go to the interim housing. While the modernization of these buildings taking place, the students are going to be in interim housing for 1 year. The first phase is expected to finish by August of 2026. And then the students from interim housing move back to their new and improved units. And then we take on the second phase of the HVC project, which includes the admin building, library building, and the cafeteria kitchen building with their classrooms that is on top of the cafeteria kitchen. That phase starts in 2026 summer and goes for another year through 2027 of summer. During this period, we also start construction of our 3-story CTE building. So the CTE building construction of it is 2-year project, is going concurrently with the HVAC modernization project. Once we finish these 2 projects, then we take on modernizing the science building and upgrading the fire alarm for the auditorium building. that one, this last phase of the HVAC modernization goes from the summer of 2027 through the end of the calendar year for 2027. So at that time, then we can start the transformation project and demolishing of the existing buildings and building new buildings.
And I have a quick question. So, when did you say the interim housing was being put into place?
It's currently underway. We are under construction. We are doing the site work, all the underground that needs to go there. And then also at the same time, the portable units are being fabricated in the shop right now. So they're expected to come in and be placed on the baseball field and be ready for the fall when the students come on campus. Those that are on building 200, 300, and 400 will start the school year in the interim housing.
So when will the baseball field be impacted?
So they have already moved
So
to
it's already impacted?
off-site, yes.
What's the contingency plan for baseball? Because it's spring. Tomorrow, I think, is the first day of spring. But right. So what are our plans for poly baseball?
They are currently, the varsity team is at Long Beach State University, and the lower level teams are at City of Long Beach. We are also improving the field for Cabrillo High School, that when we are adding lights and improve the field so they can share Cabrillo Field as well for the duration of the time that we have interim housing on campus.
Oh, right, because that interim housing is going to last a while.
Yes, and when all the transformation project is complete and we remove the interim housing, we are building a new baseball field for the campus. So that one is going to take another year. So we are looking into 2031 for the baseball to come back.
Well, that's something
Poly.
to look forward to. Thank you.
Just to build on that a little bit, President Craighead, so it's not actually until you walk us through just the massive scale of this and the complexities that then, we start sort of percolating over here on how do we do this? All right, so my question is more around, I'll use this term, like student and staff quality of life on this construction site while all this is going on. So just a couple of broad questions. What is the thinking or the planning around where students are going to be able to hang out, congregate, walk? It's hard just because I see in some cases, some of these phases are 2 years, in others there's 1 year, some of them are running concurrently. So excellent job of covering everything. And I was thinking about that as, buses are not going to make a right turn, presumably on Jackrabbit.
Yes.
Right, and then kind of go through some route that you all are experts at designing. But just give us a sense of quality of life and what our planning is for walking, congregating, just what spaces will be available, what spaces won't be available, all that stuff.
I'll get a little bit. Yes, thank you. Absolutely. We are working our construction logistics very carefully with our builder CW driver. And for the first phase that we're taking building 200, 300, and 400, they are expected to take the area outside toward the Atlantic and also the area near the CTE buildings. So when the students are in the interim housing, we have worked closely with the principal. We're bringing shade structure so those that are in the interim housing, they're going to be having a space to congregate there. And we are also, like for example, when we're taking over the kitchen, we are planning to turn the student store currently into the kitchen, and also the portables that's in the first phase, our classroom. During the summer, we're going to work and turn that 2 of those classrooms into the kitchen, so be able to serve the students effectively without much disruption to their life while this project is ongoing. Is there anything else?
That's perfect. Interim housing, I want to make sure that's clear. It's not just standard classrooms. Some of them are oversized spaces so that students and their life out there is not shorted of a function or an elective, right? So these spaces will continue to modify really throughout the duration of the project. There's a lot of emphasis in terms of student safety and staff safety during the project. So we've seen what we call like a flagman or somebody out there as part of the construction crew. I envision a whole lot of activities in that regard with respect to logistics as well. That particular question, Dr. Benitez, came up in one of our town hall meetings also, and we thought it was a great question. It's what is student life going to look like for the next chunk of years, right? You also probably pick up on, because one of the questions that we often get hit with is, can you go fast? We're going fast.
Right, yes,
right?
you are.
Can we go faster,
yes, you
though?
Are.
No.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you think about the logistics and how we can only build on certain buildings at a time while we funnel students in and out of interim housing, this is really as fast as we can go.
Yeah. And I guess that's where I wanted to comment on where we are in regards to the phases. First off, I wanted to commend you in regards to really the clarity of the presentation. I know that I'm going to jokingly say maybe I have a little bit of more, let's call it, field knowledge because of my time in the construction, but all things considered, I've just been appreciative of how clear and how plain you've made it so that all community members can understand at least where we're going in regards to the process of construction, so on and so forth. The piece that gave me a little bit of cause for pause, and I just wanted to make sure that we clarified this, and I think you've already spoke to it, but I just want to be very clear and poignant, is that this is a very aggressive plan here, and I wasn't here during the time of the initial bond measure for Jordan High School, and obviously we're getting close to the end for that project, but this is almost twice as fast as the Jordan project, and to that, it is even more students that are going to be impacted. And so as I hear some of these numbers with 52 interim housing sites, and I look at the percentage of space that's going to be taken up for interim housing in regards to the full square footage of the campus, it is going to be, which I've shared before, which you've shared before as well, when it comes to any construction project, it's disruptive. It takes a little bit of grace from the community, from the users, from the construction team, so that we can all work in a succinct manner to get to the ultimate goal, which is having the most efficient and effective learning environments that are conducive to success, right? And so as I'm looking at all of this work, I wanted to make sure that we were clear that not only does this project, as what they've shared so far in regards to some of the numbers, is it an aggressive approach, but I think it's very clear as well in regards to some of the accommodations that you all have made for our future championship softball team and baseball teams, and some of our future astrophysicists and doctors and lawyers that are going to come out of Long Beach Poly. And so all things considered, I wanted to commend you on some of those pieces. One of the things, and this is really, really small, but I wanted to also speak to as well, because me and Dr. Benitez were both looking at that. If you go back one or two slides, this slide right here. First off, I'm going to tease in a little bit. Clearly, this was with the supervision of an architect, because you can see the true north sign at the top. When you see true north sign most of the time, that is the way that we look at our plans all the time. So appreciate that. But all things considered, as we are talking about the new drop-off lane for the buses, which I think is great. I think that if anybody has driven down Atlantic at around 7:45 to about 9 o'clock, it's crazy. It feels a little dangerous, in all honesty. So I think that having a true lane dedicated to student transport and drop-off is important. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that I was a little concerned about, once that bus comes down Jackrabbit Lane, how will it turn? Is it going to make that right behind the baseball field there? Like, I didn't see how it would turn out. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for that question. When we demolished the buildings that are next to the Jackrabbit Lane, that allowed us some space to widen the Jackrabbit Lane. So now we preserve the parkings that are there. We have a dedicated lane, drive-by lane, as well as the drop-off. So the buses, when they come in, the parents that are passing by, they don't have to wait for everybody to drop off and leave, and the buses can go around the left side of the baseball field, turn right to the north, and leave through the Martin Luther King Avenue.
Got it. Okay, so on that, where the Cal Rec, or what is it? It's called, I know this. It has a new name now. It's not Cal Rec. It is, oh, help me out here. Anyway, where the park is. Got
Yes.
it. Okay. 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 I'll take that. I know that lane right now is tight. And
Yes.
so I just think that's going to be a tough turn for a lot of buses. So
Yes, but we are widening it also for
Okay.
the baseball field. So we are removing the portables that are there,
Okay.
the
So you're
9
gonna take them.
portables. So
Okay.
the baseball field is switching further south, so it allows us a better
Okay.
transition
Got it.
from the north of the baseball field to the Martin Luther King.
Got it. And then the second piece is we talked about a number of modernization components, right? We talked about the upgrades of the HVAC. We talked about obviously having a new and improved CTE building. The one thing that I've spoke to last time, I want to make sure that I speak to it again, is thinking about how we can not only make these buildings fantastic as all of the great accommodations that you've discussed already, but certifying the greatness of these buildings and being LEED certified buildings. And so I'm curious if there have been any updates on that.
Yes, absolutely. I'm happy you asked that question. As a matter of fact, I'm working with our architect right now to get some pricing points. I personally am very interested to get these buildings certified, whether it be CHIPS certified or be LEED certified. They are CHIPS designed, which is collaborative high performance schools. We are following those guidelines based on the board policy that we have in place, but we never followed with getting them certification.
Right.
I'm getting some pricing for that to see how we can include the certification into this, not only Poly, also for Washington project.
Right. And so that we're not talking too much architecture work. Can you give a quick background on what LEED certification means and why it's important to a lot of buildings, et cetera?
Yes, absolutely. LEED stands for leadership in design, leadership in energy and environmental design. And so it hits multiple energy initiatives, and not only energy, and also include a touch on wellness and the community. So from greenhouse gas reduction to water reduction to how the site is located within the community, what is the means of transportation to the site. So there are many points we can gather along the way. So that's LEED, and CHIPS similarly follows wellness for the students and also energy efficiency. We are following all these guidelines. I'm hoping to be able to get some of our sites certified for sure.
Yeah, and I appreciate the explanation. And part of the reason why I think that it's so important, because you guys are already doing most of the work. So it's like, why not go for that certification in the process? And as I think that it would be a great accolade for that community. Like I was sharing last time, I don't know of a LEED certified building in that neighborhood, nor the Washington neighborhood. And so to have our campuses be one of the first, I think, would not only be iconic, but it'll in direct alignment with the value that we represent in wanting to be the best. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, and here are our renderings. This is the first building, a student services building. Is a two-story building. As the view is taken from the Jackrabbit Lane. And I want to touch on a little bit about the historical elements of Poly High School. The character-defining historical architectural elements of Poly includes simple shape, geometrical shape buildings with horizontal band of window bands, along with some vertical elements that you can see on the auditorium and some other places within the campus. For the design of the student services building, we are honoring these characteristics with the translating those horizontal band of the windows into the design of the building. At the same time, it's creating a modern building that improve the recognition of the entrance to Poly for the students and for the community. And in the background, you see the two-story gymnasium on this slide. And here is the inside of the student services building. As you step into the building, you're welcomed with a inviting lobby which has plenty of natural light. It has a poly-spirited wall, and the picture to the right is existing 800 building, and after speaking with the community, we realized how important this building is for them. It's an iconic building, even though it's not historic. And this is a picture of Snoop Dogg in front of it having an event. So our architect very creatively has reimagined this building, and you see it translated on the ceiling of the entry for the student services building, which has the lobby for all the community. It's actually the entry to the campus now has been turned into the Jackrabbit Lane and coming into a student services building. The student services building is a two-story building. The first story has the counseling unit, the lobby, the college and career center, and what you see on the left is the second story. Not only it has additional classroom, it also houses our new wellness center, which has a new dedicated wellness patio. The wellness patio is overlooking the historic quad, and also they have shaded trees outside the wellness patio. We have removed the trees from this rendering so we can all see the building features clearly. I also want to point out another feature that we found out after talking with the community that they wanted the wellness center and the counseling suite to be near each other and to be near the entry of the campus, and that's why it's situated, the wellness center and the counseling unit is situated in the student services building. This is a view of the two-story gymnasium building. It's characterized by sleek horizontal metal green paneling, plus the vertical spans of large windows. The first story has the lobby, concessions, tickets, the locker room, weight room, and wrestling room, along with the team rooms. And the second story of the building includes additional team rooms, the staff offices suites, and a 2,000 capacity competition gymnasium, plus a practice gymnasium. As you enter the lobby for the gymnasium, you're greeted by an inviting space that is with the stairs taking you upstairs to the competition gymnasium. To the right, you see the poly-spirited wall, and also we have a wall of fame right in the front, to showcase our outstanding student athletes. And this is the view of the student promenade and the play courts. In the background, you see the campus side of the gymnasium as well as the aquatic center. The promenade connects the student entry that in this slide is to the left of the gymnasium and moves toward the south of the campus that the 2-story and 3-story CTE building plus another classroom building are situated. This is the view of the aquatic center is to the south of the gymnasium, and it features a Murtha pool that is 25 yards by 51.5 meter outdoor pool. The reason it's 51.5 meter because it has 1.5 meter movable bulkhead. This configuration allows multiple setups for swimming and water polo competition and practices. The aquatic center also has the bleachers, as you see on the right, 500 capacity, which is also shaded. And on the background, you see the new 3-story CTE building. I wanted to mention a fun fact about those green metal panels that is in the background. The pattern is expected to be designed to spell out some important poly sentences and phrases in Morse code.
So, real quick before you go on to the...
Oh, sorry.
So you were speaking to the outdoor aquatic center, which obviously I think can be really cool, and we have the blessing of living in Southern California. But I do think about like some of our aquatic centers that are indoor and why they have just some additional benefits, right, in regards to not having to be concerned with weather, so on and so forth. So I was just curious about what was the considerations when it came to outdoor to indoor?
Yeah, I believe living in Southern California with the weather that we have, we pretty much can have year-round aquatic activity outdoor. We also worked with our mechanical engineer for the temperature of the water that we are designing, and it allows to go to higher degrees and be adjusted as needed. And the feedback that we received suggested that the outdoor pools are preferred over the indoor pools.
Just curious. Thank you.
Of course. And here is a view of the locker room. The locker room for the aquatic center and the gymnasium is shared, and it's located between the outdoor pool and the lobby of the gymnasium. The reason for this design was we have a lot of students, and the poly campus site is tight. So with this design, we are able to take advantage of sharing the space for the entire sports and PE programs. The aquatic lockers are designed carefully to maximize supervision with the waist-high lockers, so that allows an unobstructed line of sight throughout the locker room. And on the perimeter walls, we have designed privacy changing stalls for all students, regardless of them being in boys, girls, or all gender locker rooms. Here is the view of the two-story classroom building. It has 14 classrooms and the dance room. What you see on the screen, it features a iconic shade structure over the social stairs. So we have designed this building to create meaningful outdoor collaboration spaces for our students. Okay, and here is the Playhouse building. It is home to our band building and drama building, and the vertical elements have been carefully designed to house poly Playhouse letters on it. So you want to skip the rest? Okay, we're gonna skip the last few slides, and I'm giving it back to David.
So only a couple more slides, and I'll go really quick through these. I teased earlier that we have some building program impacts, and I've teased this in the past, speaking to labor pool issues, other local bonds in and around us, kind of all over us. So we have competing interests, and we're competing for the same labor pool, basically. But what's transpired over the last 6 months or so is just additional challenges. So with the LA fires, kind of Pacific Palisades area, we often get hit with that question as well. Is there an actual impact to Long Beach Unified projects? There is, because again, we're competing for the same labor pool. With DSA, the state architect's office in particular, there was a period of time where their resources were pulled into that area also, just to help with building assessments and structural assessments and things of that sort, which further slowed down our agency approvals. Southern California Edison is being stretched and pulled every which way as well, so we continue to see kind of a slowdown with respect to some of those agency approvals. And then tariffs is the new one that's approaching us. We've heard about things like structural steel, aluminum, lumber, but there could be more to follow. So it's just things that we continue to track, and we'll continue to feed updates to the board on. Really with...
These are the national tariffs that you're referring
Yes,
to,
sir.
right?
Yes,
and
sir.
The international tariffs, right?
Absolutely.
Could you say that one more time
Yes.
in terms of the impacts, Mr. Miranda?
And it's true, and that's important, right? So international tariffs that impact us at this local level with respect to our projects, our budgets, our schedules, all the way through. So what are those things we can control and do something about kind of at this local level? It's things like this. So just spotlighting a Meet the Primes event where we brought in, I think our attendance was north of 160 folks in this room over at Browning, where we're just trying to introduce our building program highlights. Me and Firdaus presented coincidentally that same morning, and inviting folks to do work with us, right? Whether it's local subs, smaller subs, walking them through our process and procedures so there's no hurdle or roadblock with respect to doing potential work with us. There's occasional projects where we venture outside of our pre-qualified pool, just to continue to put feelers out there to our larger contractor community for given projects. And we're also just starting our projects earlier these days. So we've always backed into our project schedules or anticipated construction by about 2 years. We're looking at about a 2.5-year stretch at this point, just to start early design and programming efforts so we don't get caught down the line with not enough wiggle room to start construction schedules. And then this is the last section with respect to our Community Workforce Development Agreement. And really just wanted to spotlight 2 things. One, our agreement is still very much in full force and effect. I continue to dialogue with our trade council partners. I have a meeting with them next week just to continue to advance the conversations. I think where we last left it was, look, this project in terms of the 5-year agreement duration is kind of coming to a close. When we look deeply at our project, it was actually me and Firdaus and Mr. Rising. We actually found the clause in there that keeps the agreement valid throughout the duration of the project list. So the project list, if you look at it up there, and it's the reason we started with the project timeline earlier, really what hit us is the agreement was very backloaded with projects. And we were asking of information from the Trade Council to in turn present it to the board and community with respect to our metrics that we outlined in the agreement. You know, things like local hire percentages, scholarships to disadvantaged youth, priority access for Long Beach Unified graduates. And the numbers were looking a little weak, but then we looked in the mirror and said, look, we actually understand why the agreement was backloaded with a whole lot of projects, right? So just in taking a peek up there, you see several projects, really one of them that's fully complete, that's Jordan Phase 2B. Additional projects we highlighted earlier that are in construction right now, yet several projects that start in this next year or two, right? So really the position we're at now is let's continue to see the project list through all the way to the end, have good metrics we can report to board at that point in time, but all the while continuing to keep that dialogue and relationship open with the Trades Council with respect to future projects. We also, as a district, we actually have it built in within our agreement, the ability to add projects to the list. So that's part of the conversation point with the Trades Council, with our internal project teams as well, just in terms of, is there the ability to add a project during this time span as well? So wanted to leave you with those tidbits. That's a ton of information, a lot to absorb with respect to Poly. But it really feels like you captured the spirit of that particular project. There's a whole lot going on there. It's an aggressive schedule. To your point, Mr. Miller, earlier, it will be done in half the time of what we tackled over at Jordan. There's also cost savings there, right? So us going faster on any project means we're beating cost escalation and material cost increases as well.
Thank you. I'm going to ask my colleagues if we can have our questions offered up quickly because we're behind schedule on the agenda. So we'll go ahead and have a time for questions, but if we can be as quick and concise as possible.
No question for me, Mr. Miranda. We've talked about this offline. Just my full support in advancing and adding projects to the Community Workforce Development Agreement. Keeping this in mind, when we passed this agreement, it was unique. It was a first dab at it, and there were aspects of the agreement that, and you mentioned a few, kind of the local hire piece, the pre-apprenticeship opportunities for students, the coordination of it. So just want to make sure that as we're having our conversations with our labor partners, that we don't lose the spirit of why this was unique, and we wanted to do it differently, and the return on investment for our students and our communities, right? So, I know there's some learning, things didn't work out the way some things and others, but I think there's an opportunity here, if we're going to advance and add projects, to maintain the spirit of the return on investment for our students and communities.
Most definitely.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments?
I'll ask offline.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you very much. It's very exciting to see what plans are in our future.
Thank you.
Wonderful presentation. And now we're going to move right into our RPM update, if that's okay. A little pause. We'll take a little pause, maybe stand and stretch.
Thank you very much. And I'll be co-presenting today with Katrina McCullough, the district's consulting project manager on the business systems modernization. And together we represent a very broad team, as you'll see, about 150 individuals across the organization that have been working on this project for some time. So thanks again for the opportunity, and we are going to dive in. I know it's been a minute, right, since we've talked about this. I think the last briefing was July of 2024. So I'll begin with kind of a recap, just a general vision on what it is we're trying to accomplish. We'll cover kind of the current state systems architecture, the why. Why are we doing this? Kind of the case for change. I'll I think we have a pretty clear vision right now for the future state architecture. And then we're going to try something new. I'm going to share with you the Project Canvas, which is a tool, a framework that we've been learning in the Vision 2035 strategic planning team that we're going to share with you. We're going to present our project within that framework. And Katrina's going to jump in. She's going to help us outline kind of our approach to the project, the resourcing strategy, the timeline, and where we are in this source selection process, which is, as you'll see, we're kind of wrapping up. And then I'll hit some high-level metrics for you and talk about next steps. We affectionately refer to this project as RPM. It stands for Resource Planning Modernization. And the objective here is really to replace the district's core business systems with a modern digital platform, right? And when we talk about the core business systems, we're really talking about three major business process areas. One, budget finance. Two, kind of HR, and that includes both certificated and classified HR. And then three is supply chain. And within those three business process areas, there are dozens and dozens of critical business processes that are really important to the district operations. And so I would just like to say that even though we're kind of framing this as a technology project, make no mistake, this is a business project. This is about business process transformation. This is about efficiency. And this is about moving towards industry best practices within those business processes. We just happen to be the spokespersons today. I think it's important to reflect a little bit on our starting point. From an architectural perspective, our systems have grown organically over time, long periods of time. And we're currently operate kind of a patchwork. I would describe it as a patchwork of systems and applications. And many of these systems were developed before AI. They were developed before the pandemic. They were developed before the internet, the mobile device, and in some cases, the modern Windows operating system. So
what are you trying to tell us?
This stuff is old. This stuff is old. And we've earned a tremendous return on our investment for having those systems in place as long as we have. And a huge shout out to the very small number of people that support those systems, right? But we're kind of at a tipping point here. And so when I think about our systems, yes, they're antiquated. They're difficult to support at this point. It's actually, so when our Long Beach Unified students, our STEM graduates, right, graduate, they're learning Python programming, they're learning JavaScript programming, they're not learning COBOL, which is the tools that we use to support the applications that you see on the screen. In fact, it's very difficult to hire a COBOL programmer these days, and they're worth their weight in gold, by the way, if you can have one, and we have several. But it's not just that we're on an antiquated platform, it's that we're kind of stuck in time, right? So we haven't been developing new features, new functionality, mobile compatibility, any of those things. And so we've kind of locked ourselves out from growth and modernization. When you think about our business processes, they're very manual, they're very paper-driven, right? Think about something as simple as an invoice. We receive an invoice, it gets printed out on paper, it gets routed for wet signatures, right? Somebody does a three-way match between the purchase order, the invoice, and the goods receipt. Make sure that all that is good before we actually go and enter a transaction to pay. And then it gets filed in a filing cabinet, right? So that's kind of where we are. And you can see that starts to slow down the business. It's inefficient. We're, got lots of filing cabinets. And it also makes for kind of a difficult, kind of a clunky user experience for our customers, right? So now think of your modern day digital existence, everything that you can do on phones and how convenient and fast real-time everything is. It's pretty disconnected from our users' experience, and that goes all the way across our ecosystem. So that obviously our classified staff that live and breathe in these systems, but also our school-based staff, all employees that are accessing information about their payroll, their pay stubs, that sort of thing, as well as our community members and families that interact with these systems. So we think there's a better way. In fact, we know there's a better way. And so at this point in our work, our team has researched the business software marketplace extensively. We've compared various software platforms. We've designed a high-level architecture that represents, right, a consolidation of these dozens of standalone systems. And so this future state architecture is kind of one single integrated business platform that accommodates those three major business process areas: HR, finance, supply chain. And it's one database. It's one user interface, right? That's really just controlled individual access levels based on an individual's role or the job functions that they perform in the system. A couple other major features that I would point out. These types of platforms include business analytics. So the data, the analysis, the tools for reporting. We can dig into our business processes and see where there are bottlenecks. We can monitor our workflows to make things are moving through quickly. We can make more informed resource allocation decisions, right, based on having some data and insight. The other thing that these platforms that we're looking at introduce is artificial intelligence, right? So, and we've seen this firsthand over the last several weeks or months. A job description. Maybe an HR analyst is writing a new job description. AI can help develop that job description based on the context of other Long Beach Unified job descriptions that have already been loaded into the database. Think about the interim budget report, right? That can be pretty much automated and drafted, at least the first level, with AI, based on our actual budgets and our actual expenditures to that point in time. So you really start to see how AI can lean in and create efficiencies within the system. Think of our stock warehouse, right? So now we can monitor potentially when a common item gets low or needs to be replenished in the warehouse and automatically kick out that order. So these are some of the business functions that we're seeing now in a new platform. And the last piece is really kind of the data orchestration layer. And that speaks to the integration with all of our compliance partners, all of our external agencies and partners that we need to communicate with, like the county, like the retirement systems. And then just last note is, even though there will be a pretty significant consolidation of our systems, there are other systems that will continue to exist in our ecosystem, and we have to build integration points with those. In fact, when we started this project, food services was something that was potentially in scope for RPM. And after taking a look at it, we realized that food services is so specialized that it really does need to be a separate system. And so we are gathering those requirements and going through the same type of process where we're going out to market for a modern food services package that would be integrated with this system.
To confirm, is that going to be the only department that's separate from this?
No, there's still some, let me go, if I can go back here. So on the left-hand side of this slide, we tried to articulate some of the systems that will remain. For example, our student information system is always going to be separate from the business platform. Our substitute management system, a little bit of a niche. So there are some systems that are going to remain and exist outside of this RPM kind of platform. But this will be the main business platform. Does that answer your question?
It does, but I guess it brings me to, I guess, what my initial interest was, is that I haven't gone into this level of, let's call it database architecture, but yeah. I will say I can remember, this is anecdotal, but I can remember kind of refining an organization's systems that I was working with at the time. And as I started to try and build this all-inclusive system, then it was like, oh, but you know what? HR needs a separate one. And then I was like, oh, but you know what? So does business development. And then all of a sudden I realized, like, I just rebuilt the same thing that we already had. And so I guess that's my fear, right? As we're sitting here, it's
a great question. And I'll tell you why, is because when you look at we call it like an off-the-shelf package like this, it does a lot of things really well, but it doesn't do it exactly the way that we do it. But what's beautiful about these newer generation systems is they give you little exits, if you will, or the ability to develop on top of the platform. So let's say we do have some specific business requirement that we want to do business that way. We can actually develop add-ins and workflows on top of the package that are still built into this database. So it's a whole new generation of technology, but you're absolutely right. That situation, that condition exists and will probably continue to exist. Yeah. I'm going to jump ahead into the project canvas. And so this is something, you may recall seeing this back in December at the strategic planning workshop. This is a methodology that we've adopted from Harvard Business Review, and we're trying to learn our way in as an organization and try this out in our efforts to build a culture of project management for complex cross-departmental initiatives in the organization. And the project canvas really comes down to 3 different domains. It's called the foundation and the people and the creation. And we're going to unpack that a little bit for what that looks like for the RPM project. I think we've kind of already covered the purpose, right? That we're looking to streamline our business operations and provide enhanced support through schools through this new technology system, if you will. The investment piece, I think we've also kind of talked about. That was also addressed in a little bit more detail in the memo that you received, that we're looking at an investment of about $31 to $42 million over 4 fiscal periods. So we are breaking it up over time. And I would remind you that this is sort of a comprehensive investment. That includes not just the price of the software, but as well the systems integrators, the consultants, and in some cases even backfilling for district staff who will be called into this project on more of a full-time basis. And I will speak to kind of the payback period here, because we do anticipate ongoing savings once we consolidate these existing systems. And so we're looking at a payback period of about 12 to 15 years. And that's really just based on the cost avoidance of what we're paying for those legacy applications that you saw on the previous slide. I mentioned some of the technical benefits, but there's real benefits in here for schools. Right, if you think about the most important person in the student's education is the teacher. Can we leverage the system to attract and retain the best talent? Can we provide a better onboarding experience for those teachers to get them into the classroom faster? Can we show can the principal make a hiring decision, right, or try to find that bilingual teacher for that classroom that currently has a substitute and get them in place faster, right, giving them control of that process. Those are the types of benefits that we expect from this type of system, as well as potential savings for goods and services and things that we buy, as well as quicker delivery of goods and services to schools. Moving to the second domain, the creation. Obviously the main deliverable is the system. Ta-da, we're going to have this wonderful system. But along the way, there are many, many deliverables and steps that need to be gone through. So, for example, there will be design documentation. There will be business process maps and flows. There will be data conversions and testing processes and training, communication plans. There are many, many deliverables within a system like this. Katrina's going to break down the work plan, but at a high level, this is about a 3 to 3.5 year plan, and we're chunking it up into three major phases. And the change is significant. Going through there's different types of change. I mean, obviously, we expect that our business processes will change to some degree. We're not just going to keep doing the things that we're doing the way that we're doing them. We may end up doing things a little bit differently in the future. That may have impacts on the workforce, right? So people are still doing the same jobs, but they may be doing them with different tools, right? There's training and support that are needed to help get to that place where they can be more efficient using the more modern tools. There's cultural shifts, right? So now, and we're actually starting to see this already, that we're not thinking like siloed departments anymore. We're actually coming together and thinking like, oh, well, I can see how that's going to impact what I do over here, right? And you'll see on the next slide that we're talking about kind of consensus-based decisions on these business processes and how the implementation choices that we'll make over the next 3 years. And then lastly, technology. This is a different world. We're looking at cloud-based systems, so there will be no hardware in the district's data center. We actually don't do the development of this software. It's delivered to us in terms of a steady stream of ongoing upgrades and enhancements and new functionality and features. There's AI. There's all sorts of, it's a completely different world when we talk about the technology platform. And the one thing, the final leg of the canvas is people. And I can tell you, after doing this work for 25 plus years, it doesn't really matter the name of the label on the software package. What really matters is the training, the adoption, whether people gravitate and they believe in the new system and it helps them do what it is they're trying to do in support of students. You can see our sponsorship. Kelly and Yumi are our executive sponsors. It does take tremendous courage and leadership to dive into a project like this. And then you'll see in our steering committee, and I won't read through all of the individual names, but it's really kind of the who's who in the district. It's the leaders of almost all of the departments that are involved, very involved in this creation. And so right now that group has been meeting monthly to make kind of these consensus decisions, and in some cases even more frequently than that as the project unfolds. And then we think about the impact on the broader community and the stakeholders. And that's significant as well, right? So we know this is going to impact senior leaders. We know this is going to impact all employees in the organization. It's going to impact our business partners, obviously the agencies that we do business with, that we share information with, our vendor community, Mr. Miranda's contractors, right? They're all going to be engaging with this new platform, hopefully in a very positive way. And Katrina's going to walk us through kind of the resource strategy, but just at a high level, we've developed a 4-part strategy for how we're going to do this work and who's going to do this work. And with that, Katrina, hand it to you.
Thank you. Good morning. I also want to say thank you for having us back, President Craighead and board. It's exciting to be back, especially with the milestones that we've been achieving in the RPM project. Again, my name is Katrina McCullough. I'm the founder of McCullough Management. We're the consulting firm brought on to lead the requirements and RFP process for the ERP project. And this, I'm very grateful that we talk about the people part of this, and I'm excited to be able to talk about the resourcing strategy because this is a people project. And there are so many people that are going to be impacted, chief, of course, being LBUSD and all of its team members, from the subject matter experts that are doing the work to the department leads up through our steering committee and then our project sponsors. And we've had the opportunity, our team has been meeting with them over the past 2 years to really get a very deep understanding of how LBUSD does business and why and what the actual outcome is. So as we translate that into requirements for a future system, we can create this workforce support structure. So ultimately, it's the meeting of LBUSD to the software provider being the systems that are going to be in place, the security, the hosting of that. The project management consultants act as an extension of LBUSD. So the gears in the upper right-hand corner there. We act as an extension of LBUSD. We understand how you do business, but also we understand technology, platforms, and we want to advocate on your behalf for what it is that you need in order to do business, but also help to frame how you can do it in a modernized system, where those efficiencies are to be gained, how you can lead into our guiding principles that we developed, going paperless, no duplicative, not having duplicative entries, reporting. As Jack mentioned, so important to be able to access the data in the way that you want it. As we've gone out to the marketplace, the system integrators there in the lower right-hand corner, they act as the extension of the software provider. So the software providers often don't come and implement the software themselves. They lean on these system integrators. The software does what we need it to do, but the system integrator understands how to configure that for K-12 specifically. So all of the system integrators that we've been meeting with, they have experience and expertise in the K-12 space. And you can see they have a very large gear. They're going to be doing that heavy lifting. So all of those one-time processes, migrating the data over, doing those initial integrations with our systems like Los Angeles County of Education, like our student information systems. They'll be helping with those. Many of them come with a full suite of existing reports, which is why we want to use these system integrators. They have existing configurations that they've done. To speak to what Mr. Miller was asking earlier as well, a lot of these newer systems don't give you a bunch of workflows out of the box that you have to adhere to. They actually allow you the flexibility to configure them. And we saw a lot of the ability to create our own workflows. And then that system integrator, once it's stood up and we've made it through testing, they will be doing knowledge transfer so we can continue to support it going forward. The project management layer acts as that bridge between the LBUSD experts, those who are going to be helping to make sure the requirements are met, that they're doing the testing, they're helping with the training. We're going to act as that translation and accountability layer. So we'll translate from LBUSD to the system integrator. Yes, you understand K-12, but we're very specific. We're California, CalSTRS, CalPERS, our bargaining units. We need to make sure that you're doing it the way we really actually need it done based on our rules and regulations and laws and policies. And we'll act as the translation layer back from the system integrators. So the system integrators will say, yes, we understand. Here's how we can do that in this system. Here's how this system can do it. And we can be that bridge between the system integrators and LBUSD, as well as accountability. As Jack said, there's the breadth of deliverables on a project of this size. We'll make sure that the right people are sitting in the room as those deliverables are developed, and that we have the acceptance layer for those, as well as the decision-making frameworks, the communication frameworks, the risk mitigation frameworks. We'll have all of that in place so we can have a seamless implementation.
Katrina, I'm going to jump in because
Sure.
I don't want to lose the opportunity here, and I don't know, since we're running a little bit late on the agenda, I don't know
Sure.
how much time we're going to have.
I can speed through.
And actually, the question isn't really directly for you. It's more for our exec team, and Jack, you touched on it. So all of this is wonderful. I'm supportive of anything that advances, improves our efficiency, advances our desired student outcomes. Here are my wonderings that maybe could be characterized as concerns. We're not a business, although we have many of the features of traditional businesses. We're an educational system, right? So that being said, I would ask sort of the team as you're sort of walking us through, and you touched on it, Jack. I'm not trying to trivialize or minimize getting the best teachers, recruitment, onboarding. Where are those demonstrable impacts on the student outcomes that we're thinking about? Much like I asked the question of facilities, right? Better classrooms lead to
Right.
X, Y, and Z, right? Furniture leads to X, Y, and Z. So I would ask sort of the team to think through that. More importantly for me, though, in this climate of efficiency, of privatization of education, of corporatism, I do have a concern, and it's I read the memos, Jack. It's listed as one of the risks of potential turnover of critical staff. And Katrina, you used the words, the phrasing, I mean, I get it correct. This is people-driven, people-based. And I don't want to get lost in the conversation of modernization and efficiency, that there are people that get impacted with all of these considerations. And that there's I love the cost-benefit analysis here, benefit, return on investment, payback at 12 years. I get all that. But I really would want to hear from the team as we're moving forward with this. Where's the people component, right? I just saw a robot delivering food across my street yesterday. And I saw a person in a wheelchair competing for sidewalk space with a robot that's delivering food, right? And the robot didn't know where to go. And the person in the wheelchair was waiting for the robot to figure out, which way of the sidewalk this is. There's people involved in technology, modernization, and so I want part of that accountability. This is sort of to include the impact on lives and people in the spirit of modernizing and potential benefit. So I would ask the team to think through. These are big shifts, big cultural shifts that certainly improve our systems, but we're not a for-profit entity here. So I just want to throw that out as we're moving through this, Jack.
Sure. Yeah. And I can respond, at least initially, to some of those questions and concerns. I'll latch into the people part in the change, because that is something that we've thought about, and we've kind of began already mapping it out. We see basically three kind of rings of change and impact on the organization. Most of our employees will have a very marginal impact, and we think it's actually an improvement in their quality of life. So, for example, you want to get your pay stub, you want to enroll in your benefits, you want to see what's happening, you need to submit a request for time off. All those types of transactions, they will impact the entire workforce of the organization in a slight but positive way. There's a second category of folks whose everyday jobs will be more significantly impacted. Think of that buyer, think of that accounting clerk, think of the HR analyst, right? They pretty well live and conduct the majority of their business within either this tool or that tool. For them, the change will be more significant. They will require more training, more support, right? It's still the same job function, but you're working differently. You're working with a different set of tools. Maybe the places where you spend time are different. You spend less time running down paper and doing manual transactions, but more time doing kind of value-added work and analysis. So I think in those cases, it does kind of raise the bar to some degree of what it is and how we work. And then there's some folks, and I think this is a very small group of individuals, that their job, it's completely changed, right? So right now we have, and this is probably more on the IT side than perhaps other areas of the business. I call it the business, the school district, where it's completely changed, right? We're not going to be doing as much COBOL programming. We're not going to be doing as much mainframe operating. And so in those cases, we may be creating new job functions, new roles altogether. I don't think that we're not talking about replacing people, right? Even with AI, we're not talking about replacing people. We're talking about using these tools to help make our people more efficient, faster through some of the stuff that they would probably like to do faster than they can and more efficiently than they can today. And then kind of tying back to benefits, and I invite others to jump into the conversation too, but tying back to benefits, it is kind of an indirect to students, but I really do think there are some tangible benefits, like with the hiring, recruiting. We're looking for bilingual teachers. We're looking for whatever. We can see where we can start to pull levers in terms of compensation. Are we competitive here? Do we need to spend more there? What about our stipends? How do we pay people? Do we need to pay differently for different outcomes? A platform like this gives you the opportunity to start to do those things, right? So I think that's where you're going to start to see benefits. Of course, there's hard side, cost savings and avoidance and things like that. But I don't think that's really what you're talking about. You're talking about like, where does this really matter for students?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I can add to that too, we've done focus group, as we've been doing this, we've made sure to include all of the folks here in the building that are going to be using the systems, but also we had a focus group with principals, and we had a focus group with site supervisors and office administrators to understand what their challenges were, what their pain points were. When we started showcasing what new systems could do, there was quite a bit of enthusiasm for it. So I do think I am excited for what these systems can do, not just for the staff here, but for those who are on the school sites, who are there educating, our future generations.
And I know we're tight on time, so I'll try and be quick here. I too was thinking of that, but I was thinking about it on the other side. I was putting on my business hat and was thinking about it from functions of the business and the financial components of it. And you talked about how the cost of a system of this capacity is going to be spread over a 4-year time period, and I'm thinking about all the work and all the effort and all the manpower that goes into putting a system like this in place, and it does make me excited, but it also brings me back to I'm going to use a small anecdote like I always do, right? Think about like with the purchase of cell phones, right? We get this new cell phone and it works great, and then you have it for about a year and a half, and it's like, man, it doesn't do this new technological thing. They're like, oh, because you need the upgrade. You have to buy the new system, or you have to buy the new phone to be able to do this. And so my fear is that you spoke to a little earlier about how we're putting this big financial investment and how most of the development of the system is outside of the district. It is not an internal redevelopment component of it. How do we not put ourselves in a position where we're consistently dependent upon this financial upgrade of the system every 2 to 3 years because this new thing has come out and it doesn't become as cost effective as we would prefer so that we can use these resources to give it back to the classroom?
Sure, thank you. I would describe, and this is kind of goes back to a little bit about what I said about the technology shift, going from like buying hardware and servers and data center equipment and developing our own system to, hey, we just subscribe to this thing in the cloud. It's kind of an evergreen model, if you will, meaning that, yes, we're buying a system based on the business requirements at hand, but the software developers are continually investing in new features, just like your Apple iPhone, right? Every quarter, we will be receiving new updates, new functionality, things that we could choose to deploy or add into our business operations or not, right? We will have those choices. But when you sign up for a new system like this, it's really kind of ongoing subscription-based as opposed to a one-time. So yeah, the big part of the cost of the project is the implementation cost. But the ongoing part of it, and we've modeled that out as well, you're paying for that ongoing software service, kind of evergreen, right, refresh and updates to what's new and modern. And that's why you tend to stay on a platform like this. This is a major decision for an organization because this is probably where we're going to live for the next 10, 15, 20 years.
My takeaway after all of this is don't buy any more stock in file cabinets.
No more
not.
file cabinets.
Trying to reduce the paper.
Yes.
But let me take Juan's question up to 10,000 feet. So is there anybody else, educational institution, that is doing this successfully? When I think about it, I think maybe, but we do things pretty well. I think about, the new legislation that does away with the statute of limitations for sex crimes at campuses that will bankrupt a school district. And here, we're not worried about that. But who's doing this and who's doing it well? And is it this good thing here, good thing there? Or what's your thought about who are your models?
We have actually done some of that research as we've gone through, as well as we've asked the system integrators and the software providers to provide us case studies specifically of K-12 where it has been done, specifically for large, medium-sized districts who have done the full suite of ERP implementations across the board from Hillsborough to Charlotte-Mecklenburg, to, I don't know if there's others that you think off the top of your head. San Diego County of Education, we're going to meet with them this week. We've begun reaching out for them for references. You'll see on one of our slides, we'll potentially be going to do site visits for them. We want to see not only what they used, how they used it, what worked for them, what didn't work, what their lessons learned were, but also their experience with the implementation itself and lessons learned from the implementation. What should we be looking out for? What worked really well for them? Fresno is another one who's using these systems, who's all of them going live with the vendors that we've been sitting in the demonstrations with. And for the most part, what we're hearing is very positive impact. And a lot of what we have also that we didn't talk about earlier was, and Jack had the slide for that, we have all these supplementary little systems because our systems don't talk to each other and they don't do everything we need them to do. We have to take these one-off patchworks of systems to be able to do that, and there is such a value add to being able to do everything you want to do in one place.
Excuse me, can I add to that, Katrina, as well, to answer your question? when Yumi and I in 2020 started to look at other systems, the realization hit very hard that we were far behind in terms of our school district technology systems. And so our initial determination was we had a lot of cyber risks that were happening. We had product that we couldn't replace. Obviously, the inoperability of those systems brought us to the initial study, which also led us into thinking about the role of a chief technology officer in a district and the management of that. So even before there was the study that is being spoken to across the country, we did some initial analysis and determined that we were really in a phase to catch up in a dramatic way. Dr. Benitez, one of the things that you said about not being a business, I want to remind us we are the largest employer in the city of Long Beach, and totally appreciate what you're saying. Our core business as a business is the education of children. And behind the scenes, so incredibly important that these processes function. The cyber risks, which isn't the focus of today, but that are being currently addressed through what we do have, and the work of our technology department. But future state, so important. I mean, we've seen what has happened in many districts across the country related to ransom and other things that this also solves for. Interoperability, you're going to hear more and more as we get into the phase of budget this year, some of the challenges that we're experiencing because of the ways that our systems don't or do talk to one another. And just thinking about even a payroll system that is functional, but that can't necessarily be upgraded, and what that can mean for disruption to our employees. So it's hard to even spend, the time talking about this when we're so focused on student outcomes, and our organization is desperately in need of this topic. So great things that you've lifted, and thinking about the questions that you've asked today.
And I would say, Mr. Otto, just in terms of benchmarking ourselves, I think there are many school districts that are looking to implement a new system, their second generation of ERP, where we're looking at our first. So that's just to provide some context on where we are with respect to other school districts.
Thank you. All right, in the interest of time, when we last met, we were there at the vendor proposal phase. We are now, we had a tremendous outcome in terms of being able to post our requirements and get the submissions back. The submissions we got were those that were leading in the industry. We were very excited about that. We shortlisted them to 3. We're currently in vendor demonstrations right now. So when we got the requirements, that was the vendor saying, yes, we can do it. The demonstrations now are, we want to see how, and we want to see if it actually makes sense for us. We have 2 more days of vendor demonstrations towards the end of March and April. While we're doing that, we're asking for their final implementation strategies, SOWs, costs, as well as doing our references and potential site visits with the goal of actually having the top vendors at least identified and beginning those contract negotiations in spring of this year, and moving towards bringing that to the board in June. And the schedule, this is similar to the schedule that we showed before. This layers in some of the feedback that we did get from the vendors during our implementation strategies. We've done multiple hours of implementation strategy sessions with all of the vendors. This marries up best practices with going first with financials. It's a little more streamlined than HR and payroll. A little bit less risk involved in it, so we cut our teeth on the process. We learn how to work with the system integrator. We go live with our chart of accounts, the control systems. We move into the accounts payable, accounts receivable, journal, general ledger, and then supply chain is part of that second. And that is a July 1st go live in 2027, aligned with our fiscal year. There's not a blue bar all the way across the bottom in our HR and our payroll. That does not mean there's absence of work, though. So during that whole time, we'll still be getting to know the system. The system integrators will be continuing to get to know our procedures, our policies, what we need in an effort to make that HR and payroll, once we move into configurations and testing, a little quicker. We do want to go live in July, aligned again with our fiscal year as opposed to the calendar year for payroll, due to the retirement reporting. That's the feedback that we've gotten, and many other school districts have done that as well. These do include hypercare. So of course, once we go live, we will have the same implementation team on board for at least 3 months to ensure that anything that comes up, we can take care of it very, very quickly for our post-go live support. And that is the end of,
Yeah, thanks. And I'm just going to close this out real quick and open for any other questions that you have. We use the tagline, creating a better future together. And I think in this case, the project team is really living into those words. If I were to describe this process, I would say, number one, it's very collaborative. And number two, it's been very comprehensive. And we've heard that feedback, even from the software vendors and the people that have engaged with us throughout the last several months. We've got over 150 individuals that have been engaged from 13 different departments, and they've been engaged for a period of time, 18 months at this point. By the way, we are a little under budget and a little ahead of schedule for this phase of the work. You can see the number of requirements, 3,500 unique requirements, 146 different business processes that we've mapped out, current and future state. There's been a tremendous amount of collaborative work to get to this point. And here we are, right? This is actually a picture of one of our software demos. We've spent 11 days to this point of software demos. As Katrina mentioned, we've got 6 proposals from various vendors. We've narrowed that down to 3, 11 days of demos. We have an evaluation team of 9 individuals. And by the way, they're not the only ones that are sitting in that room, right? So those 9 evaluators have brought into the room the people that are closest to the work on their teams. So everybody has been part of this journey together to see what's possible in the future state, to learn about these new systems, and to weigh in on, hey, we think this is best for us, or have you considered this? Maybe this doesn't work for us. And that's really how we've framed the entire approach. To this point, we're very proud of that. And so just outlining the next steps, Katrina mentioned some of these things that we're just wrapping up our site visits and reference checks with the vendors. In the next 90 days, we do anticipate finalizing a contract package, making a recommendation to the board for the software provider and the systems integrator. Those are big, right? Big items that are headed your way. Likewise, we're also in the evaluation process for project management consulting services. Another contract that we're looking to finalize, develop, refine the scope, and bring it your way within the next 90 or thereabouts number of days. And if everything goes according to plan at this point, we would be kicking off the project, the major phase of the implementation this summer, right? And then we know that's when the work. Then that's when the work begins, right? We have at least a year of heads down work, developing, testing, training on the new system before we get to that first phase of launch in late 2026. So with that, President Craighead, I will turn back, open to any additional questions. And I just wanted to say thank you to our executive sponsors and really to those 150 team members that we are representing today that have put their heart and soul into this work just to get us to this point.
Thank you. Let's see, Dr. Benitez.
Yeah, thank you, Jack, and thank you, Dr. Baker, for reaffirming the business aspect of the work. So, by all means, I understand how important it is to have sound, efficient financial systems, sound business practices, and then we adhere to general accounting principles and all that good stuff, right? So, that's important. I think my calling to the team, including you all, is much like we do with facilities, which folks don't always think there's a direct correlation, right, to student outcomes. And that's where I think we're different from a for-profit entity, right, that in many cases is responsive to the shareholders, right, in these companies to make money. And in our case, the vision and the values are slightly different, and some would say drastically different. So to me, it's more about the nuances of how these efficiencies, how these improvements, how these systems get us to where we need to get with students. And again, you did a great job of highlighting one of those around we've all sort of acknowledged and affirmed the importance of teachers in the classroom, right? So this will get us the best potentially bilingual teachers, right? And they need to get paid, right? And they need to know about their retirement benefits. So that was really more for me the accountability piece. We're not certified public accountants on this board, at least that I know. We defer to the team's expertise, to your expertise, to the consultant's expertise. So to me, it's just connecting the dots to where these systems, where these procedures, where these platforms make us better in terms of student outcomes. That was sort of the scope of where I was coming from in my comments.
Thank you.
Do we have any other comments or questions? What resonated with me is when you talked about the advanced age of our patchwork of systems, and when you talk about things that predate our smartphones and that sort of thing, that really shows you the need for the update and modernization of our systems. So I want to thank you for that wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
I know I was looking forward to this follow-up because last August was, kind of groundbreaking in this area. And so it's nice to hear that there's been so much progress. And I also know that you do go into classrooms to see how we can advance systems and make improvements. So I want to thank you for that because it is all about our students. So with that, we're going to take a break.
Just one legal question, President Craighead.
Yes.
For legal, Jeff, so I noticed on my copy of the agenda, not sure about the public facing agenda, under this item in the agenda, under type, it was blank. Usually I see either information or action or information/action. Was that just a?
It looks like it was just an error.
Okay.
The information only.
Okay.
And since you're not taking action today.
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
So we will take a 15-minute break and reconvene at 10:45 at the latest. So a little bit more than 15 minutes, but it's a nice round number, 10:45, because we need to kind of reconfigure the room and everything. Thank you, everyone. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Hope you were able to have a little bit of a stretch and relax, but we're getting right back into it. So we will start our presentation on the English Learner Master Plan. And I'm sorry, what? Oh, Dr. Lund. Well, we've shifted, so I'm looking around. There he is, Dr. Lund. Look, there you are. Take it away.
Well, good morning, everyone. This is a very exciting day. This is really a culmination of multiple 2 years of work around our English Learner Master Plan that we are sharing with you today. It is with great pride and gratitude that I share the work of our team, really celebrating and culminating really this 2-year project, collaborating with teachers, collaborating with parents, collaborating with outside organizations. And let me start by just recognizing that team that is here with us today that's going to guide us in some small group work, starting off with our director in OCIPD, Dr. Angelica Gonzalez, Catherine Perez, Jennifer Crockett, here to my right, Marta Alba Gonzalez, Dr. Alma Black, Chelsea Powell, who is not here with us today, but has worked on this project with us, and Trace Roth. So we're going to take this time to really work through different sections of this draft document for feedback. This is really initiating the next phase in gathering feedback from community, from different groups and organizations, and revising this document that we have in front of you. This document builds on really some visionary work at the state level around the California English Learner Roadmap. It also relies heavily upon our Vision 2035 work and uplifts really what is within our vision work and our graduate, adult, and systems portraits. It is both an operational and an aspirational document. It outlines the policies, practices, and procedures supporting English learners as they move through our system, while it is aspirational in promoting really an assets-based approach to supporting English learners and supporting multilingualism as a concept and as an entity within our system. It is a complement and a supplement to our Title III Master Plan They require a document that the federal government puts forth in support of Title III funds and support of English learners within the federal compliance system. And as I alluded to, this is a draft in every entity. You will see every page on this document is marked intentionally with the words that this is intended for review and for feedback and for revision. As comprehensive as this document is and as celebratory as this document is, over 200 pages, it is a draft. So it is with that intent that we share today and learn today from you in terms of walking through the 7 chapters of this document. There is a supplemental document to this document that is the dual language master plan that Dr. Gonzalez will probably refer to as well. That is still in drafting form that we will obviously add as an addendum, if you will, to this document. So with that in mind, let me turn it over to Dr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for making space to review draft number 1, because we know there will be several others of the English Learner Master Plan. Although compliant in nature, as Dr. Lund described, this English Learner Master Plan has been shaped by the aspirations and vision of DLAC. And for those of you that aren't familiar with DLAC, DLAC is our District English Advisory Committee. And so it's been shaped by their vision, their hope, and in support of us here this morning, I want to introduce to you the DLAC president, Señora Sherry Lopez. Por favor, salude. DLAC has been, and as we'll share with you, have been fundamental to drafting and co-designing the vision of this plan. And Señora Lopez informed me that the DLAC members are at home watching us on YouTube, cheering us on from home. So hello, DLAC members back at home. All right, so let's get started. So what is an English Learner Master Plan? We've been on a road trip of feedback and consultation with this first draft. And we've gotten some feedback about the audience for the master plan. So I'm going to offer another way to look at this. So an EL master plan is a comprehensive local policy document that supports teachers, counselors, administrators to provide consistent, that's something DLAC has told us, we want consistent and appropriate services to English learners. And what it does for parents, students in our community is it describes our approach to English learner instruction as a means for them to hold us accountable. So for us, it's a plan of what we need to do to support English learners consistently. For parents, students in the community, a way to hold us accountable. It creates a shared understanding of EL programming and instruction, provides a roadmap for ELs to reach their full academic potential. So why an EL master plan? As Dr. Lund shared this morning, it is not necessarily a requirement, but it is a best practice that creates equitable, coherent, sustainable systems of EL services across our system. It develops equity-driven processes focused on students' assets. Hopefully you noticed that as you read through or skimmed through our draft, that EL assets are foundational to how we design the plan. It implements that accountability model that I talked about. Each chapter is guided by goals. Some of those goals are familiar to you because some of those goals are from the LCAP. So we have accompanying documents that support, or the EL master plan supports the other documents. I'm not sure which comes first, but you'll see that accountability model throughout. And it codifies research-based practices that are aligned to the California English Learner Roadmap that I'm going to spend some time describing in just a bit. But before that, Dr. Lund already introduced you to the team, and I want to tell you a little bit more about the team members. On our writing team in alphabetical order, we have Marta Alba Gonzalez, who's our dual language coordinator. So wave, Alma. Alma Black, who's our ELD and world language curriculum lead. Alma. Jennifer Crockett, who's an assistant director in OCIPD, who leads ELA and humanities. Yours truly, Catherine Perez Morales, our EL services coordinator. Catherine has also taken on a leadership role in the drafting of the master plan and coordinates our feedback and consultation sessions, and she also leads our DLAC. And Chelsea Powell, who is not here with us this morning, who is an ELD coach, And new to the team this year is Trace Roth, EL service coach, who's brought a wealth of knowledge and straight out of the ELD classroom. So let's talk about that English Learner Roadmap. The English Learner Roadmap is not new. It was adopted in 2017. It provides a comprehensible vision for educating English learners. It ensures equitable access. Again, that idea of supporting multilingualism as an asset for all students. And it aligns with existing state policies, including the California ELD standards and the Seal of Biliteracy. The roadmap is outlined by 4 guiding principles. Again, you should hopefully have seen these guiding principles throughout the document. Those principles are 1, asset-oriented and needs-responsive schools. That recognizes and values EL strengths, highlights culturally and linguistically sustaining practices, and it focuses on collaborative partnerships, really leaning into engaging families, community members, in EL's educational journey. The second principle is intellectual quality of instruction and meaningful access. That describes this rigorous standards-based instruction, scaffolded and differentiated supports, including ELD. Principle 3 focuses on the system conditions that support effectiveness, and that describes coherent policies and programs, effective leadership and shared responsibility, data-driven decision-making. And the fourth principle, alignment and articulation within and across systems. And that ensures coherence across our system and beyond, focusing on higher education systems. And that image you see on the screen is an image that Kabe created many years ago, and we used each of those little thumbnails to represent where we're focused, where we're leaning in the principle throughout the chapters. So you should have seen those little thumbnails throughout. As you've read through the draft, I hope you were also able to see the connections to LBUSD key priorities, and the stars here highlight where we leaned in to those priorities: culturally responsive and sustaining leader and teacher practices, culturally affirming in classroom and school environments, implementing leader and teacher professional development systems, and data monitoring processes and structures. This I won't review, but this is hopefully a support to you, a glossary review of terms. We know that we use a lot of acronyms in education, and we tried to at least introduce the acronym by describing it within the chapters, but page 8 in your notes is a glossary, so you might want to tab that and come back to it as you review the chapter. You might need to revisit that. So a couple months ago, we had the opportunity to share with board members our progress of the EL Master Plan. And you might remember that at that point, there were 6 chapters. And you might have said, well, now there's 7 chapters. And if you were part of TK-12 collaboration, as we've really engaged with that group throughout the year in our visioning and our design of the master plan, you might remember there were 5 chapters at some time. I think we're done. I think we're good with 7 chapters. But as we started writing, just chapters started evolving, and chapters started growing to about 90 pages. And at that point, we said, that's not a chapter. That really should be broken up. And so we have 7 chapters in our master plan. The first chapter begins with identification, program placement, and assessment, very compliant-based. Chapter 2 describes an aspirational vision for asset-based instruction of English learner instruction, asset-based approach to English learner instruction. Chapter 3 branched off from Chapter 2, which is our support for newcomers, long-term English learners, and English learners with IEPs. Chapter 4 describes access to the core curriculum. Chapter 5, again, another compliance-based chapter, monitoring, reclassification, and accountability. Chapter 6, family and community engagement, and Chapter 7, that vision that I've been describing to you, expanding multilingualism. So using students' first language as an asset to build on. And the idea that you don't have to lose a language to gain a language. The master plan outlines that renewed vision for English learners that I described, and it's grounded in the community aspiration. DLAC was clear what their hopes and dreams were. Support English learners to reach English proficiency, yes, but maintain their first language. And so hopefully this vision and the chapters describe that for you. So I'm going to narrate the EL journey for you in this animated slide. The journey of an EL begins at enrollment when parents complete a home language survey. And so if a language other than English is marked on the form, students are assessed on that initial LPAC. And all of that is outlined in Chapter 1 of the master plan. Then, as we support the English learner through their journey, however long that journey may be, whether it's 5 years, 7 years, hopefully less than 7 years, students receive integrated and designated ELD and linguistically sustaining asset-based instruction, leveraging this family's funds of knowledge. And that is outlined in chapters 2, 3, 4, and 6 of the master plan. And with that consistent support, students reach reclassification criteria and are redesignated, are reclassified fluent English proficient, which is that acronym RFEP. They continue to be monitored and supported for an additional 4 years, and that's outlined in Chapter 5. But we're not done, right? We said it's a renewed vision. And so what we then hope is that students demonstrate proficiency in English and another language, whether it be their home language or a third language, leading to that California Seal of Biliteracy. And that's outlined in Chapter 7, Expanding Multilingualism. So the journey to the English Learner Master Plan. Although this slide begins in 23-24, as Dr. Len mentioned, a 2-year writing journey, the journey really began many years before that. And I do want to take some time to read a couple of the things. So our journey began, it's represented in the development of aspects of the plan, beginning with the establishment of the multilingual office. How many of you were here when I came and shared that we had a multilingual office that was beginning to be developed? And one of our hopes and dreams for that was to come and present to you a master plan. And although it took longer than anticipated, there was lots of work that had to be done before then. So I want to share some of those things with you. In that time, we've revised our reclassification criteria and created an alternate reclass criteria for students who take the alternate LPAC. Those are students with IEPs. Not all students with IEP, but the students that take the alt criteria have IEPs. We revamped both the monitoring of RFEPs and ELs using a digital platform. No more lost forms. We developed K-12 ELD expectations, as well as curriculum and instructional resources and unit guides that include developing 7 new ELD courses, 3 of which will come to you for approval in the next couple months. We opened 6 enlace programs in middle schools to support our newcomers. We have 5. We did close 1 because of enrollment, but we have 5 enlace programs. We created district-wide Title III funded interventions. We provided consistent professional learning beginning in 2021, that Summer Equity Institute that had an entire day focused on supporting English learners. We supported teachers with asset-based instruction of English learners, integrated ELD, designated ELD. We created feasibility study criteria, a process for new language acquisition programs guided by Prop 58 that has led to the opening of 2 dual DLI programs while we've been here together, which is Riley and Stevens next year. We're excited about that. We've partnered with Cal State Fullerton to actually develop the first Khmer bilingual authorization program at Fullerton. We've recruited Long Beach teachers and provided scholarships to them to obtain their bilingual authorization. If you recall, bilingual authorization is necessary for a dual language program. We have expanded our heritage language programs across our high schools. Just about every high school now offers a heritage language program, and we've doubled our Khmer for Khmer speaker programs to 2, now also offered at Poly. We also, and this is what we're really proud of, we've built a coalition of DLAC leaders. DLAC attendance has about doubled in the last couple years, and that has been instrumental in the co-designing of this plan. All right, so back to what we actually have on the slide, which is our drafting journey that officially began in collaboration with Loyola Marymount Center for Equity for English Learners. And along with a couple other school districts, we met regularly throughout that first year, learned about best practices, looked at exemplar master plans. So it was a year of learning, listening, reflecting, planning, and taking action as well. That summer, we did an open call to anyone who was interested in supporting any LBUSD employees interested in consulting and giving input in shaping the vision for the plan and actually the content of the plan. September through February, we've been on writing marathons. My team was tired of me pushing to meet deadlines, but we did a lot of writing between September and February, which is in support, also obviously support from DLAC and TK12 collaboration to create what we have here as draft number 1. So March and May, we're going through consultation and feedback cycles that Dr. Lund has already described for you. In June, we hope to come back to you with a completed draft that incorporates community feedback and input for action, so that this summer we can spend with a publisher to publish the document. Let's talk a little bit about input sessions. I think I've narrated a lot of this throughout the presentation. Again, we began with DLAC in the fall of 23 as we also engaged with Loyola Marymount, and DLAC shared their hopes and dreams, and they co-designed a mission and vision. So on the slide, you have a picture of the type of posters that they would create outlining their dreams. And I see Senora Lopez smiling over there because she remembers that. In the second picture there is our DLAC secretary, Senora Loaiza. Is that Loaiza? Yes. Leading the vision and mission development during a DLAC meeting. That's Maria? That's Maria, yeah. That's Maria, right? You can't see from here, but I'm pretty sure it's Maria. I talked about the summer already. In the fall, winter, DLAC continued to consult on EL supports and expanding multilingualism. There's Marta and Alma presenting to DLAC at a session. And then before presenting draft 1, we consulted with cross-office departments like course management, state and federal programs, research, and the inclusion office. And now we are here in what we're calling feedback session of draft number 1. We've engaged with a group we call EL Champions. That's a beautiful group there of site leaders, teacher leaders, classroom teachers, and OCIPD curriculum staff who were born from the summer group, but really these are the group that continue to give input and consult with us throughout the year as they have a true passion for this work. We've also taken this to TK12 collaboration. Many of you in this room also participated in a similar protocol. You're going to participate today on Friday at TK12 collaboration. We appreciate that feedback from you. We have worked with parent and community facilitators as well, particularly around Chapter 6, I believe. We've worked with our partners across our district, and now we are here with you, hoping then to synthesize this feedback and identify priority areas for revision that are going to inform draft number 2. Draft number 2 will hopefully be ready by mid-April, maybe mid-April. And at that point, we are going to translate draft number 2 because we wanted to create an advisory committee from the groups here, from DLAC, of course, from our LBUSD students and parents and staff. We work closely with several EL strategists or EL policymakers that include the County Office of Ed and Californians Together, which have been true partners in our learning and in our work. And so really bringing those groups together, as well as with Lucy's going to provide a list of community members that we want to engage in. So we will do an open invitation to community members to participate in our advisory committee to help inform revisions for draft number 3, which will hopefully be our final draft. We also want to post this digitally for community review and input for those that can't make community advisory committees, and of course incorporate that recommendation for the final draft. All right, I'm going to pause there for questions about that before we jump into what our process this morning will be like. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. And I'll start off by saying I want to acknowledge all the work that's gone into this, and not just into the plan itself, but all the work that has been going on for years leading up to the development of this draft plan. So I do have two sort of process questions before we dive into the board feedback. One is there a particular reason why we're looking at June at finalizing this? Is there state compliance, just internal kind of decision? So just that's my first question.
Yeah, that is an internal decision. There's nothing tied to it, but maybe closing out a school year of work and just putting an end to it. But there's nothing else tied to that.
Yeah, thank you. And I kind of thought that, but we if for whatever reason the final iteration isn't in June, it's not like the LCAP where we got to vote on this, by a certain time, right? My second question, and again, it's more of a process question, is, and I got to share a little bit of this with Dr. Baker. It's a lot, and it's a lot for community with whatever community meetings are being envisioned for the next couple months. It's a lot even just being assigned one chapter, and I'm not sure if one board workshop sort of does justice to the work, to our ability to have conversations about this. And so my question is, what other opportunities will we have, not just as board members, but parents, other stakeholders? No disrespect to DLAC, thank you. Thank you for all the work. But DLAC was there sort of on the front end of this and has been there along the way. Not everyone, as you know, como lo digo en español para traducirle, ¿sí? Not everyone may have had a chance to participate in a DLAC or in an ELAC. Not everyone even knows what this is. So that's why I ask about the time and sort of process so that we can be thorough and as intentional as you all have been in providing this draft. I just want us to be able to maximize our time. And I know for me personally, one session isn't going to be enough. And I know that whether it's language justice or dual language immersion or translation and interpretation and or our emerging bilinguals, I've been hearing from community, and Dr. Baker knows this, for many, many years on this. And I don't want to trivialize the community members that are vested in this and the students, right, from just us having one opportunity for this. So that's why I asked the time frame. But my bigger ask is, what is the thinking behind expanding this to as many people as possible at this point, since this document itself, will be more of you didn't use this word, sort of a back-end policy guide, sort of the practical usage of this. I honestly want to have opportunities for us to maybe even listen in on some of these community meetings that are expected to be planned and convened. So that's my broader comment, because it's going to be hard for me, given that I got chapter 2 and that this is a big thing for us.
Yeah, actually, along those lines, how did you gather input from teachers, students, and other stakeholders in developing this particular plan? Beyond DLAC.
So I'll start addressing Dr. Benita's comment. We are open to extending the journey. We're open to engaging again in another board workshop, inviting you to community. The way we've engaged thus far with with ed partners, including teachers, is we really focus in on one chapter at a time, because like you said, it is a lot. And folks lean into the chapter that they feel they have something to contribute to. And so that's how we've engaged folks thus far, is that they lean into the chapter they feel the most comfortable with or they have the most to give, and that's where we enter. The summer, now to Board Member Lopez's question, in the summer we opened it. It was just open because we were beginning to vision and design. And so it was a very open, and Catherine can speak more to it as she led it. But then again, those groups started becoming smaller and smaller. We looked at some groups, for example, Adams Elementary, who has shown great growth on LPAC, and we're looking at the LP indicator. So we're really looking at bright spots and bringing those folks in and say, tell us about what you're doing to help inform the practices that we want to codify. And so I'll let Catherine, if she has access to a microphone, share about how we've engaged teachers and counselors and parent community facilitators, again, around their areas of expertise.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Is this working? Good. All right. So we had the opportunity to do an all call. So an email went out to every teacher in the district, and it was a exciting time during the summer to have a vast variety of experiences and all levels. And so we ended up breaking up into elementary, secondary, and then we also had a counselor outside group too as well. And so we really dug in, and there were, I would say, more questions asked than necessarily feedback provided. And so we felt we needed additional sessions to really have people contribute feedback. Trace and I have had the opportunity to work with the parent and community facilitators monthly. So we work with them on supporting their ELACs at their sites and also partnerships with community and parents. And so we have taken that chapter to them for their feedback. We got a lot of feedback, and we have already worked on revisions that are not even here yet based on their feedback. We also have taken it to counselors that have been tremendous champions for our ELs and have been kind of going above and beyond, holding listening sessions for students and then bringing that student voice to our team to let us hear about their experiences, and also invitations to the listening sessions for students.
And how many folks are we talking about in that initial group? And then did we invite community? And because I was here on the board, and this is something that I think I've been pushing for, and so I wasn't aware of that. But I'm not a teacher in the classroom, right? However, I would like to know how many folks were involved in this process, and then our efforts to engage community.
Yes,
parents.
I have, I think it might be linked in the PowerPoint, I'm not too sure, but we have a list of all of the teachers who participated in that because they enrolled in a MyPD course. We used A, B, and C in the Teacher Resource Center for that first group, and then we have had smaller rooms since, so I couldn't give you a precise number, but we had 3 large groups with 3 facilitators, including Martha Alba Gonzalez leading one of those groups. Mm-hmm.
Can I make a suggestion? Just a suggestion in the spirit of this is a draft. I think it builds on Ms. Lopez's question. So the glossary is absolutely necessary and essential, right? At different points, so I've been on the board now 7 years, we've gotten data on emerging bilinguals. Ms. Lopez has asked, questions on emerging bilinguals. I think at whatever future stakeholder meetings are planned, it might not be a bad idea to share some data to provide some context. And I'm not talking about a deep dive, right? But just in the PowerPoint, this is what I had. I'm just throwing it out there. And I know we're going to take a deeper dive, but the sort of context for me is important. What percent of our district are ELs, and how are we defining ELs? Who is that, right? Because we also get caught up in juxtaposing, we're not doing that today, but folks, that we're only talking about Spanish speakers here, but you pointed to our heritage, for example, our Khmer speakers. We have some Russian recent arrivals, right? So what percent, and what is the portrait of our ELs? Dr. Lund has chimed in several times when we take a deep dive on who we're talking about here in terms of students. What percentage are not yet reclassified versus those that have been reclassified? And why do we, think of the data that way? What percentage are reclassified, and when did that happen, and sort of the context behind that? What percentage is our long-term English learners? So the definition, the acronyms are great. I think thinking through what's the portrait of the students that we're talking about while we take a deep dive helps right? It tells us sort of a story of, that, I love the way this started off, right? That family, as they're filling out the survey, what do they know? What do they know about who we call emerging by ELs? What don't they know? I hear parents all the time talk to me about, I didn't know that if I put a language other than English on this survey, that this has implications. You're talking to a parent that this had implications for. But at the same time, we don't want parents to run from the fact that they may not just speak one additional language, they may speak 2 or 3 languages. What does that mean, right? There's a whole chapter here on asset-based, strength-based, culturally affirming. And I think we're missing an opportunity through this process, if we just jump in, and so I appreciate the meeting today, to get a master plan done that a big percent of our population, when we talk about language justice, language equity, this asset-based approach, may not even know. Again, the technicals, very academically, that's the first thing I'll say, but that's good. I'm an academic here. So that's where I'm coming from, right? And my suggestions here that these things did not happen in a vacuum. I'll say the same thing about our governance process. We didn't just decide one day we're going to do bylaws or governance stuff or student outcome stuff. That's 4 years in the making. This is much longer than that. So I think the story that you gave us a glimpse of through the PowerPoint presentation, Dr. Gonzalez, needs to be told, needs to be heard, needs to be affirmed by those segments of our community that we have not done right by, but those segments of our community that have not genuinely been able to engage in a DLAC or in an ELAC, because I know what I'm going to hear, right? That we passed a master plan, DLAC, and again, props to the parents and the caregivers and the participants in DLACs and ELACs, and props for doubling the number, right? We had a conversation 5 years ago, if I recall, that hardly no one was showing up. So absolutely, let's leverage that, but we have an opportunity here to expand that. And I'm long-winded there because I don't want that to be lost on us, especially if we're not urgently trying to get this thing done by June.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I can absolutely work Dr. Lund and Dr. Baker on a new timeline that works. We would have loved to engage possibly in some additional consultation, but we also had a timeline too. We wanted to get to you a draft number 1 to have something to look at, something to give us feedback on, and so we're happy to make those adjustments, to incorporate as many voices. We understand that communities' lived experiences are important to informing the plan, and so we are, and this is absolutely a draft. I keep saying draft number 1 because that's all it is a draft number 1.
Okay, so are we ready to get into our small groups then? 'Cause
I think we are, because we are, and please help me with time adjustments as needed. So we're going to engage now in a process to go into a deeper dive into a chapter or 2. Those of you that have 2 chapters are shorter chapters. Don't feel that we picked on you with more reading. And so our facilitators will guide you through a discussion, and maybe we can should we just shorten the discussion a little bit? So we're good? Okay. So we will leave it as is. So small group discussion followed by, please give in that discussion, share your findings, but also share feedback, and our facilitators will be capturing that feedback and then doing some synthesis to ensure that we heard your feedback and we're capturing it correctly. Then we're going to, they're going to spend some time with you to prepare a chapter overview so that you have some time to come back to this space and share a brief chapter overview as well as a synthesis of that feedback that you are giving us. So that's the process. There are 3 questions that I prepared you all with, but because of time, I'm inviting us to maybe just focus in on question 1 and question 3. Question 1 is, how does this chapter reflect the district's commitment to equitable, high-quality instruction, really that alignment to district vision and priorities? And the second, are the policies, practices, and supports clearly articulated to ensure effective school implementation? And those connections to that EL roadmap. But if you want to dig into question 2, you are welcome to. I'll leave this slide up for you all. Sound good? Okay, so let's put 20 minutes on the clock. Okay. All right. All right, we're going to get started back together. Shall we start in order, or do we go backwards? What are our recommendations? We'll start in order? By chapter, okay. So let's begin with the first group, facilitated by Catherine, reviewing chapters 1 and 5. You don't want to do it?
I've been delegated to do this. So we'll start with chapter 1. Chapter 1 discusses the identification, assessment, and program placement of English learners. The overall feedback is to make, as Mr. Otto said, everything more simple in order to move things forward. Specifically, improvements to the simplification of the EL parent notification letter. And this is also the feedback we received from families in DLAC. Parents are receiving an EL notification letter that is very dense and very complex. Really clearing that meaning of that letter, what is the intention of this, and as Mr. Samuel said, showing families what these levels mean and what we are doing and what families could do to support students. Additional feedback in Chapter 1 includes continued codification of best practices, and with the home language survey, although there has been efforts to provide language, Trace and I just provided training to the people at the sites who are administering those home language surveys, continued support in the not only parent understanding, but for the people who are administering that home language survey at school sites to build knowledge and understanding. Should we move to Chapter 5 or do we go to 2? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll do a quick summary of the chapter, and then Jan will highlight some of our conversation pieces. So chapter 2 focuses on an asset-based approach, and full transparency, I got the notes from Jan, so I'm not this organized and smart.
She just modeled scaffolding.
Yeah. Differentiated scaffolding, Angie. Again, a lot of intentionality around funds of knowledge, right? And the gifts, the talents, the knowledge, the beliefs, the attitude that students already bring with them, and highlighting that this affirms, first prompt here, our work around equity, high quality instruction, not just for English learners, but English learners as a part of the broader values that we want to not just uphold, but affirm through this work. So again, key components, models of English language development instruction. We have our ELD Pro here with us, so we had a good conversation about that. The chapter also outlines instructional frameworks. So I had some questions about how this looks in a sort of a school-based, classroom-based setting and some of the challenges with that. And then essential practices. So the affirmation of our equity, inclusion, and commitment to bilingualism is clearly articulated. So here's how I would describe it, and then Jen can sort of talk about the conversation pieces. We hit on all the things that are the right things to say, cool things to say, affirming things to say. And from a district level, advances the institutional culture that we think is important. And then there's some really good, clear, technical pieces, I would say, around implementation of this. What I think is missing is the individual journey that our students have. Hence me starting off with, it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's very different in third grade, fourth grade, than it is for a recent arrival in the 10th grade to our district. There's different work to be done at that 6th, 7th, 8th grade level. And so I don't think, at least in my first two readings of the draft, that's all there. And as a part of that, again, if we're going to affirm our communities as not just an essential part of us moving forward in this work, but an essential part of the values that we want to uphold with the community, our partners, and they have gifts and talents. Then I think that's the part for me, that much like we look to an IEP for individual goals, right, and accommodations and services and supports and resources, and then we share those supports and tools and resources with teachers. It's not a one-size-fits-all. And there are different needs, but also different assets and talents that our students bring in. And I think that's the part of the bridge. Bridge usually starts from both sides. We got the technical foundation really well. We got the values piece really well, and the philosophy and ideologies. Where they meet, I think, is where some of the recommendations that I would make. But Jen actually codified this in much better than I just articulated.
Before Jen speaks, and I think that's a great place to bring in teachers as we bring in teachers for consultation and collaboration, a great place to bring them in with their expertise.
So some of the feedback that we talked about is, again, Dr. Benitez talked about the funds of knowledge and how important that is, but how do we make sure that is not just words on the page? What does that actually look like as instructional practice, and make that very clear? We talked about these essential practices, the 3 tenets, and what does that look like from site implementation and accountability for all. So making sure that sites are implementing it and that we're all holding each other accountable to those essential practices as a system. And finally, this was mentioned a little bit, but when we're looking at those 3 tenets and those essential practices, how can they really be clearly seen in classroom instruction, but how are they also differentiated through a student's journey they would look different 3rd grade, 10th grade, or when a student comes to us.
Thank you. Chapter 2 team. Moving on to Chapter 3.
Yeah, so I'll kick us off here. And I think it's a synergetic transition, as Dr. Benitez talked about how often when we think, or the conversation about our ELs has been in an umbrella conversation. I think that Chapter 3 does a good job of disaggregating that topic into 3-4 buckets of students in particular, and truly defines not only what those students are, but what their students' needs and some of the potential service models that could be provided to them. And so, but those groups are our ELs with IEPs, our LTELs, and the newcomers. Yes, the newcomers, right? All things considered, it was really an understanding it was a differentiation between understanding language and comprehension, right? And so I thought that that's where this conversation becomes an important piece. As you spoke to earlier, we understand that there are a number of circumstances that are influencing our students' abilities to learn, ranging from their socioeconomic environment to things that can be as difficult to understand from a learning capacity from a learning disability. And so not only truly defining those students, but making sure that we give them an individualized educational plan to support that is important. And so we spoke a little bit to that, and so I'll hand it off to Alma.
Thank you. So in terms of the feedback, the overall chapter, it was recommended that it be framed using the EL journey to simplify the content of the chapter. Another aspect that was made clear in terms of a need was for us to really consider the language that we're using when we're referring to the language acquisition for our newcomers, especially at the high school level, where it is very challenging to acquire a second language, and making sure that the language is sensitive around the realities of that, and not to just kind of gloss over, quickly learn a second language, but really being intentional and conscientious of that as it relates to our older students. The third recommendation was to take a district-wide approach into the reclassification process in terms of providing incentives, recognizing that we do have a home language award that is spoken about in Chapter 7, but really being more specific in terms of looking at learning styles and motivation for different students and using a tool or a process to really incentivize the process for them in terms of reclassification. Another thing that was talked about was considering incorporating more resources as it relates to inclusive and affirming school spaces for our newcomers. It's a little bit better developed in our secondary schools, more so than our elementary, so really calling out the need for this at the elementary level. And also, calling out the onboarding process for our newcomers. There is a space saver in the chapter that's still in development, but the ask was to make sure that it is an accessible and a clear tool that teachers and administrators can use in the process.
Thank you, Chapter 3. And we are working with counselors, as somebody previously shared, who are really going above and beyond compliance as an onboarding process to develop that section. Thank you, Chapter 3. So Chapter 4.
Yes, Chapter 4. So Chapter 4 is about access to core curriculum, and our group came up with some ideas, kind of a chapter summary about alignment with equity, and regardless of language, every student should have access to instructional core, and that's spelled out in this chapter. And alignment should be implemented at all levels, including counselors, teachers, school administrators, and district systems and leadership. And we felt that the outcomes were clearly laid out in this chapter. A couple of things that we talked about was access to the A through G requirements for every student, that we ensure those A through G classes are accessible at every high school in support of our English learners. Let's see, was there anything else? And it was mentioned from Chapter 3 also about newcomers, and we kind of took a deep dive into a few of the ideas in Chapter 4, and one of the things we talked about was just the word newcomers, and how we have to say something like, less than a certain amount of time, in this country, or that type of thing. But being very mindful of the safety and security issues that raises now in, a national discourse. So I don't know if there's any way we can change that verbiage to reflect our values in keeping our families and students safe and secure. But if there's any way of doing that, and I know that we also have a way of saying, beginning the English language, process, but the new to our country thing, I don't know if there's any way around that part of it.
Yeah, that's great feedback. Our guidance documents for school sites don't refer to students as such. They actually refer to the level of support needed. That is not just based on the number of years in the country, but really based on language and other things. And so we have the language, and we can absolutely substitute that language. Thank you.
Can that be one of the questions that we ask community?
Sure.
Parents, caregivers, stakeholders, what they would feel comfortable with?
Yes. Chapter, where are we? 5? And that's back over
me.
to Catherine.
Yes, thank you. So Chapter 5 outlines our district's processes for monitoring, reclassification, and accountability. And so I heard some of these topics bubble up in other chapters, but really thinking through how are we progress monitoring our English learners? How are we monitoring for our reclassified ELs? But beyond that, how are we monitoring ourselves as a system, our sites, to really make sure that we are supporting the diverse needs of our English learners? Our team didn't have the opportunity to read Chapter 3, but there were a lot of questions around specific supports for newcomers and LTELs and dually identified students. And so I'm like, a lot of that's in Chapter 3. One really key specific feedback that I think is helpful is really outlining our goals. We have annual goals, as Mr. Otto mentioned, but really identifying what is our annual goal for our ELs, but also thinking about more long-term overarching goals as a way to have a more cohesive and systemic long-term plan. And so really thinking through our use of data, as Dr. Benitez mentioned earlier, coupled with a more robust plan for district-wide monitoring and supports of our English learners.
Thank you. Chapter 5. We are going to skip Chapter 6. They took a really deep dive in Chapter 4, and so we're going to jump over to Chapter 7.
Okay, and I know Marta Alba Gonzalez will chime in, but I do. So this chapter highlights the commitment to multilingualism, emphasizing support for English learners, and this is in the dual language immersion programs. The district currently has 7 elementary schools with immersion programs, dual immersion programs, 6 that have the 90-10 model and 1 that has a 50-50 model. I did engage in a conversation talking about looking at the research that shows that students who learned in that 90-10 model will probably have better outcomes than our other students. And actually, I'm just going to jump off to say that I'd like to see presented the data that shows the performance between students in our regular classrooms compared to the students who are in dual language programs. But we do have one school with the 50-50 model, and we do have 1 middle school, and that's Keller, and the plan includes opening a 2nd school, that would be Stevens, in the fall, yes. Expanding, so now I'm just going to engage in the conversation that I had with the group. So I think it's important to expand dual immersion programs in our district. I think that we need to make sure that our EL students have priority in these programs. When we look at the number of students in these programs, our EL students, we're not prioritizing them. And I think that not only should we prioritize them, but I think we should look into expanding these programs to make them accessible to any student. And that should be part of the plan, to any student in the district that is interested in being a bilingual, biliterate student. And I think that we need to also include a better way to promote these programs to our families. I think that some of our families, especially those possibly a bit more educated, understand the importance of being bilingual, biliterate, and apply to these programs. And oftentimes, our communities that may fear that their child may not learn the English language may have reservations in applying to these programs. So I hope that this plan includes the expansion of the programs, making it accessible to our EL students and open to any student interested in being bilingual, biliterate.
And just to add to what Board Member Lopez said, we do have, we talked about the dual language goals that we have in our plan and the key actions to achieve those goals. And some of that is making sure that we do some targeted outreach to the community to make sure that they understand the dual language program and how really it is taking that asset-based approach and really thinking about not just learning English, but maintaining your native language, which is Spanish, in order for them to be bilingual and biliterate. And so we talked a lot about these key actions that are here, as well as one of those is prioritizing our English learners in our dual language program so that there is this a better balance between our speakers of English and our language, our Spanish-speaking students as well. Was there anything else?
Thank you. Is there anything else anybody wants to add before we close?
Was that the last chapter?
That was the last chapter.
Can I add just a process observation?
Yes.
Great small group conversation. I think one drawback to this format is that we didn't get to hear sort of what was going on and percolating. And if there's a way to sort of think through process-wise, allowing for individual space, but then it's hard to summarize, right? Jen and I and Dr. Baker kind of were just like, okay, what are some quick things that we could say? And I feel like we missed out from sort of a larger group conversation. And I know it's a time issue, yeah.
No, I was going to say the notes that maybe each group took could be
Oh.
compiled for the board to have a
Perfect.
resolution.
The other thing I want to say is I want to express gratitude to our community members and our parents and our staff that led to the development of this. One of the things I heard most about when I first started as a school board member was a lot of the language inequity issues. And it's wonderful to see that a lot of this work was moving forward, right? And that's not to say nothing was being done. But I've always shared in here sentiments around this is why policy is absolutely important, right? We have to implement it. But that's one of the ways to hold our district accountable, right? So when we ask for data on our emerging bilinguals, unless we have systems in place and academic regulations in place and professional development in place, it's hard to then hold ourselves accountable. And then when we do, how do we then measure, can we do more? Can we expand? Can we do better? And that doesn't happens zero, and this is not your responsibility, but it doesn't happen without the push and involvement from our students and from our community members, but also doesn't happen if we don't have a critical mass of staff, school site and district level staff, that's just ready to move on this. So I think this is a prime example of, again, we're not done yet with this, that our community is an ally in this educational journey that we're taking. And what more of an ally than one of the most arguably diverse communities in our country at this point, not just around language, right, but of all the other assets. So I appreciate the intentionality behind the document, but I think it also highlights some opportunities that we have to build more, to do better. So don't go anywhere, whether it's in DLAC and a call in the next several months, according to this timeline, and if we're not sticking to a hard June, we need to hear from more community members, not just in a feedback kind of way, but that this isn't a one-off engagement, right? We always talk about doing more community engagement, that this is another opportunity, not just when things are not good, not things when we just need your advice or help one time, but this plan is only as good as our ability to implement what's in this plan. So I'll call in to community members, keep doing what you're doing, let us know how we can do better, and then to invite other community members into these spaces as well. So thank you again.
And to all of you, thank you for engaging in this process on behalf of I know you wanted some numbers, 9,347 English learners in our district and 8,422 reclassified English learners in our school district. Thank you. And we'll...
Can I just very quickly, just for food of thought, how will the effectiveness of this master plan, once we have it, be evaluated, and what metrics will be used to measure its success? So if you can keep that, and because I think that that'll be important.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. We will adjourn this part of our meeting and reconvene at 5 p.m. tonight in this room. Thank you.